Chapter 54. Xiong Xiangu half knelt on the ground in a sorry state. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at the top of the restaurant. A tall figure stood there, and the bowstring of the great bow in his hand was still trembling. Although it was not as good as the stone splitter bow, it was still a rare, hard metal bow. His eyes narrowed. Huang Binga. Huang Binga said, "Stronghold Master Xiong, this arrow is just a greeting. I hope you know how to retreat, or don't blame me for being merciless." Xiong Xianwu broke out in a cold sweat. He knew that Huang Bingu was not boasting. Just now, if Huang Bingu struck out with his full strength, it was extremely likely for him to be shot to death on the spot since he could not turn around in the air. A divine archer who occupied an advantageous position and launched sneak attacks was just too terrifying. Yang Anji said, "You really want to stand up for this kid?" Huang Binga said, "The spiritual ginseng was indeed found by Li Qingshan, but I've already consumed it and cured my chronic illness of many years." Sect Master Yang, "You found the wrong person." Behind him stood over a dozen headhunters and over a dozen powerful bows. The four leading figures of the martial arts community of Qingyang had appeared together, all for the sake of Li Qingshan, whether they were friend or foe. The disciples of the Iron Fist sect were all amazed, while the nearby residents mustered up their courage and opened a sliver of a window, secretly watching this rare sight. The torches danced wildly in the cold wind. Yang Anji, Xiong Xiangu, Lu Hong, Huang Bingu, and Li Qingshan's expressions flickered. However, they seemed to be frozen without moving. Each of them had their own worries and considerations, holding each other back. No one dared to strike out carelessly. Li Qingshan suddenly laughed aloud. His laughter traveled very far in the cold wind. "Stronghold Master Xiong, this is your only chance to kill me. Why don't you do it? Once I personally kill you, the macaques under your command will still have the opportunity to flee. If you miss out on this opportunity today, I'll just come back in the future and uproot your Black Wind stronghold, leaving not a single one alive." Arrogant. When everyone present heard this, they felt that it was an ear-piercing arrogance. The Black Wind stronghold had wreaked havoc in Qingyang for many years. Apart from the Drawn Rains village who stood aloof from worldly affairs, the Dragon's Gate sect and Iron Fist both wanted to destroy them very much. However, Yang Anji and Lu Hong had both considered that they only had a chance if they worked together. However, even if they succeeded, they would have to pay a heavy price. But now, Li Qingshan actually said that he wanted to destroy the Black Wind stronghold by himself. Even though he had a good opinion of his martial arts, he still felt that he was too arrogant and ignorant. Xiong Xiangwu's face bordered on fury, becoming more and more like a black bear. "Then I'll be waiting for you. If you don't come, I'll make sure not a single person in Crouching Ox Village survives." In the end, he threw down a vicious threat. "No matter who it is that dares to help you, I'll exterminate their entire clan." He left in a hurry with his people. The disciples of the Iron Fist stepped aside and did not stop him. A group of bandits actually treated the entire Qingyang city like it did not exist. They really were lawless. Yang Anji also used his movement technique and vanished into the night. His voice rang out from afar, "Just you wait, Li Qingshan. Your enemies will only increase. Your death won't be far away." Lu Hong clasped his hands at Li Qingshan and left with his people. Meanwhile, the aristocrats were willing to donate 10 times the amount of money for suppressing bandits as long as they spared the disciples of the Dragon's Gate sect and did not involve them. The messy restaurant had already become empty. Only Li Qingshan stood by the window, holding the soaring dragon sword he had obtained from Yang Anji. Huang Bingu brought people over. Li Qingshan turned around and said, "Hunting Chief Huang, I want an explanation." 2 hunters brought over Xiao He, who had been tied up firmly. Huang Binga said, "Kneel and speak." Xiao He told him the entire story in detail. In the end, he said, "Just kill me. I won't regret it." Huang Binga said with difficulty, "I've watched Xiao He grow up. I can only blame my lack of discipline for this. Please spare him this time." He drew the hunting blade from his waist and stabbed it into his own shoulder. "Hunting Chief," Xiao He said in a hurry. "Xiao He, there are some things that you can't do. I, Huang Binggu, have killed countless people in my life, but I've never been ungrateful, nor have I ever repaid kindness with enmity. Huang Binggu extended his hand, and the hunting chief behind him handed another hunting blade to him with a pained expression. Huang Binggu stabbed it into his left shoulder. Tears streamed down Xiao Hei's face. He was filled with shame and regret. Ever since he was young, his respect and admiration for this man surpassed even his father's, yet now he had to watch him suffer for him. Huang Binggu stabbed the hunting blade into his chest. 3 blades and 6 holes, a life for a life. This was the explanation that a person of the Jianghu could give. A hand firmly grabbed Huang Binggu's wrist, and the blade could not stab any further. Li Qingshan was stunned at first before coming to an understanding. The hunting chief wants to take all the blame for this and then end it all with his death? It's useless. Even if they are skeptical, they will still come to me. Huang Binggu let out a heavy sigh. As someone who had traveled the Jianghu, he knew how terrifying this matter was. A secret manual or a treasured sword could stir up a sea of blood in the Jianghu. The lives of those first-rate, or even super-rate experts, were all used as if they were worthless. The red glow in Li Qingshan's eyes disappeared, and he actually revealed a smile. It was not a wild laugh, but a hearty one like a normal youth. But I'm not afraid of them. These words were said in a hearty and confident manner. Without waiting for Huang Binggu to remind him, he continued, "Is my tiger bone wine ready? I'll have someone send it over tomorrow." Li Qingshan said no more and walked down the stairs. When he was outside the building, he suddenly felt a chill on his face. Raising his head, he saw snowflakes drifting down from the pitch-black sky. A clear shadow flew out from the locust wood tablet and danced around him. Li Qingshan said to himself, "I'm not afraid of enemies. I'm afraid of betrayal." He saw Little and looking at him with a confused expression. He could not help but laugh. "You won't understand even if I tell you. In any case, you won't betray me, right?" Little and might not understand the meaning of betrayal in Li Qingshan's words, but he understood the anticipation in his eyes and hurriedly nodded. "Let's go. Tonight isn't over yet." Li Qingshan's eyes burned with a raging flame, as if it could melt this world of ice and snow. Old Knickers drank a mouthful of aged wine and turned on the charcoal in the stove to resist the pervasive winter chill. He had never had a wife in his life and had been the armory guard for several decades. His neighbors had all forgotten his name, only remembering that his surname was Zhang. They all called him Old Zhang or Old Cutoff. Then, for some reason, the children around him began to call him Old Knickers, causing this old man who had been single his entire life to be tainted with a bit of vulgarity for no reason. It was already very late at night, but he still had not slept. As usual, he reviewed his life as if he was ruminating on the most brilliant parts of his memories, chewing them over and over again while he was tipsy. As for whether these memories were real or fake, they were just like his name. Not only bystanders, but even he himself had no way of distinguishing them. Thump, thump, thump. Several loud noises interrupted his recollection. He unhappily opened the door. Who is it? Why is it so late? Then, he saw a teenager standing in front of the door, giving him an apologetic smile. "The county magistrate, Lord Yi, sent me to the armory to retrieve a few things. This is the document." Old Knickers shivered all over. Although there were many false parts in his memories, at least some of them were real. He had really been a soldier and fought in battle, and he had seen the scene of real swords and guns being used to kill people. Although the teenager before him was very young and amiable, he smelled a familiar aura, murderous intent. Murderous intent lingered. It was a feeling that only fierce soldiers who had taken dozens of lives in the army would have. If he encountered such an enemy in battle, he would definitely stay as far away from him as possible. He did not even look at the document in detail. With trembling hands, he took out the key, picked up the lantern, and opened the armory door. The armory door was about 3 meters tall, forged from pig iron. 36 iron nails were lined up neatly, and a pair of tiger heads had iron rings in their mouths. Old Knickers forcefully pushed a few times, but the door did not budge. He awkwardly said, "It seems to be frozen." The teenager placed his hand on the cold iron door and gave it a light push. The iron door opened with a rumble, and he stepped into the armory alone. Old Knickers shrunk his body and waited outside the door. Over the past few years, this was the first time someone had come to the armory to retrieve something. What did he want? And what did he want to do with it? While he was thinking, he heard a clanging sound coming from afar. A figure stepped out of the armory. The black armor wrapped around his sturdy body, giving off a cold and murderous feeling. The armor skirt fluttered along with his movements. Chapter 55. Li Qingshan patted the 3 quiver of arrows on his waist and carried the soaring dragon sword and stone splitter bow on his back. He rested the shockingly heavy and extraordinarily large tyrant spear on his shoulder and vanished into the snowy darkness. All he left behind was a string of deep footprints in the snow. In the yamen, the advisor said to Yi Dachuan, "Sir, Li Qingshan won't listen to your advice. There's nothing we can do." As it turned out, Yi Dachuan saw how the aristocrats refused to assist him due to the Black Wind stronghold's influence. He calculated that he would definitely lose against 200 people alone, so he tried to persuade Li Qingshan to stay and think things over. However, how could Li Qingshan listen to him? He forcefully took the documents and left. Yi Dachuan paced around the room. Suddenly, he stopped and stamped his foot. "Gather people for me?" The advisor said in a troubled tone. "How do we have people?" Yi Dachuan bellowed anxiously. "Those country bumpkins actually dared to get their disciples to kill an official right in front of me. The Dragon's Gate sect is a den of thieves. Tell them that whoever refuses to send anyone is a traitor." He understood now. If Li Qingshan died, then he could no longer be the district magistrate. The Black Wind stronghold and the Dragon's Gate sect might even vent their anger on him. The advisor said, "Sir, please reconsider." If he did that, he would offend all of the aristocrats of Qingyang. Yi Dachuan kicked him in the bottom. "Why aren't you going?" The advisor could only obey. As soon as he left the hall, over a dozen pitch-black figures blocked his way. He had no idea when they had entered the yamen. The advisor was surprised. Using the weak lantern light in the hall to look over, he saw that the dozen or so people all had bows and arrows on their backs. So it's the Drawn Rains village. "Good men. What business do you have visiting so late at night?" Huang Binggu's shoulder was wrapped in white cloth, but his bearing remained steady. He patted the advisor's shoulder and said, "Sir Yi, Huang Binggu of the Drawn Rains village is willing to lend a hand." After Li Qingshan left, Huang Binggu and the others found an inn to rest. Before they had even fallen asleep, they received news that Li Qingshan had left the city in full armor. Of course, Huang Binggu would not think that he was running away. He suddenly stood up and said, "I'm going out for a while. When I'm not around, Little Black will be in charge of everything." Everyone knew where he was going. Xiaohe said, "Chief Hunter, we'll go with you." After experiencing this, his face lost a lot of the frivolous childishness of youth and gained a lot of the steadiness of an adult. "Prioritize the village." Xiaohe said the name of Drawn Rains village was not obtained by compromising. "We have formed a great grudge with the Black Wind stronghold, so we will definitely not be able to live in peace for long. We can only place our bets on that person. If you want me to take responsibility, then this is my idea." Huang Binggu said, "Good. I didn't suffer those 2 slashes for nothing today." Qingyang City that had just quietened down became noisy once more. In Iron Fist, Iron Lion Lu Hong was also awake. Instead, he was thinking about everything that had happened today. Li Long stepped through the door and knelt down. "Master." Lu Hong frowned. "What are you doing?" Li Long said, "Please save the Crouching Ox village, Master." The Black Wind stronghold had not massacred the village before because they wanted to capture Li Qingshan, the main culprit, first, and also because of his connection with Iron Fist, which was why they had not struck so easily. However, after tonight, everyone would fall out with each other. The Black Wind stronghold would definitely take revenge madly. They would definitely swing their blades. Lu Hong said, "Go fetch your father's family and caretaker Lu's family." However, Li Long remained kneeling. Please save the Crouching Ox Village, master. Didn't you dislike that place? But that's my hometown. Lu Hong sank into his thoughts for a while as if he was considering the pros and cons of every aspect. Suddenly, he stood up. Go, gather the disciples. He had already considered the spiritual ginseng that Li Qingshan had brought with him and the wealth of the Black Wind stronghold. Li Long was overjoyed. Thank you, master. Yi Dachuan used his position as district magistrate and borrowed Li Qingshan's prestige and the might of the Drawn Reins village to order the aristocrats to send people. However, there were still some aristocrats who resisted, unwilling to send people. Just as Huang Binggu furrowed his brows and considered whether he should kill them to establish his authority, Lu Hong strode over. He clasped his hands. Hunting Chief Huang, I've heard a lot about you. Afterwards, he said to the aristocrats who resisted, Today I, Lu Hong, swear that I will eliminate a great threat for Qingyang City. If you are willing to assist me, I, Lu Hong, will never forget. What he was trying to say was, even if you are unwilling, I will never forget. Given the current situation, the aristocrats finally dared not resist forcefully anymore. They sent people over reluctantly. Although they were reluctant, they did their best when they sent people. Xiang Xiangwu's words lingered in their ears. If they did not kill the snake this time, they would be waiting for revenge. As a result, they could only do their best. And, with two powerful people like Huang Binggu and Lu Hong watching over them, they really did feel like they had an opportunity to flatten the Black Wind stronghold. The Black Wind stronghold wreaking havoc was not completely unrelated to them. Just like Caretaker Lu's nickname, Half-Village Lu, most of the land in Qingyang City had been annexed by these aristocrats and local tyrants. Many of the villages that the Black Wind stronghold had plundered were their assets. As for kidnapping and demanding ransoms, who knew how much they had done? Otherwise, they would never have been willing to collect money from the previous district magistrates for suppressing bandits. Xiang Xianggu had never thought that his threat would instead force the aristocrats into becoming mortal enemies. Yi Dachuan gazed at the people who had gathered in disbelief. It had completely exceeded his initial expectations. There were actually 400 or 500 people. He watched over them in the center with his identity as the district magistrate, while Huang Binggu and Lu Hong commanded him. He had never done something so valiant in his life. His heart that had been blinded by fame and fortune actually began to burn with a sense of bloodlust. The advisor was dumbfounded as well. He thought of a phrase written in a book that was originally very distant from him, with a call from above, followers will gather, and the entire world will rebel. Perhaps all that was needed in the world was a single warrior, a single hero, and they would be able to turn the impossible into the possible, guiding everyone and completing so-called miracles. However, this hero who led the way would usually not have a good outcome. Old Knickers opened the door to the armory with trembling hands. Armor and weapons were taken out one by one, equipping this group of bandits. With a clang, they set off on their journey. Huang Binggu thought, hopefully I can make it in time. This gathering had already taken up far too much time. Lu Hong thought, kid, you better hold on a little longer. Though, if you die, I'll avenge you. Li Qingshan advanced quickly in the darkness. His equipment weighed 100 or 200 kilograms, but not only did it not make him feel like it was tiring, but it instead gave him the pleasure of releasing his strength. His armor was cold, but his blood burned hotter and hotter. His footsteps became faster and faster, and in the end, he was practically sprinting through the wilderness. His heavy footsteps were like war drums, thumping loudly. He did not know how long he had walked in the deep mountains and old forests, but his footsteps suddenly came to a halt. His gaze pierced through the wind and snow like a sharp sword, shooting towards the ravine. A stronghold was creeping in the darkness, and a few faint lights could be seen. The Black Wind stronghold was right in front of him. However, Li Qingshan was in no hurry to go forward. He untied the wine gourd and drank it all in one gulp. The strength he had expended instantly recovered, and there was even a scorching aura rampaging through his body like a wild horse. Chapter 56. The assembly hall of the Black Wind stronghold was brightly lit. The important figures of the stronghold gathered together, currently discussing the matter regarding Li Qingshan. First boss, what do we do now? The kid is currently hiding in Qingyang City, and he's under Huang Binggu's protection. Yang Anji has spread the news of the spiritual ginseng. Who can protect him? He'll die sooner or later. If he dies to someone else, our Black Wind stronghold won't be able to regain our prestige, and the spiritual ginseng will end up in someone else's hands too, said the scholarly second boss. Sure enough, Xiang Xiangwu's eyelids twitched. His desire for the spiritual ginseng was no less than anyone else's. Didn't he say he'd come himself? By then, I'll smash him to a pulp. The seventh boss was a bald fatty. His face was vicious as he swung the huge hammer in his hand. The bosses all looked at one another and sneered, "Seventh brother, only you believe he'll come." As long as they had some brains, they would never believe someone would actually be bold enough to barge into their Black Wind stronghold alone. If he doesn't want to come, we'll force him to come. Although the snow has sealed off the mountains, making it inconvenient for us to mobilize on a large scale, we just need to send a group of people, and it'll be enough to slaughter the Crouching Ox village and regain the prestige of the Black Wind stronghold. By then, we'll find a few relatives and friends who are close to him and slice them off. We'll send them over piece by piece. I refuse to believe he'll still be able to sit still. The second boss revealed his vicious plan. The bosses all cheered, praising him greatly. The second boss smiled proudly as well. Thump! With a great sound, the entire stronghold seemed to shake. A bandit rushed in and said, "Oh no, boss. Someone's smashing at the stronghold gate." In front of the stronghold, over a dozen bandits guarding the gate stared at it in fear. The gate, made from a few thick logs, was unable to give them any sense of security at all. Thump! Another great sound rang out. The logs trembled and splinters flew into the air as if a huge beast wanted to barge in. Under the constant, violent collisions, the gate caved in and cracked. Boom! The huge logs scattered, and a piece of wood struck a bandit in the chest. He immediately vomited blood and collapsed. However, the mountain bandits did not have the time to pay attention to their companions. Instead, they stared blankly at the entrance. A tall figure stepped into the Black Wind stronghold amidst the wind, snow, and dust. Stop right there, this is Black. A bandit who seemed to be the leader of the group endured the fear in his heart and spoke, but before he could finish speaking, an arrow shot out from the smoke and dust, ending his words and life. Li Qingshan raised his stone-splitter bow and said calmly, "I know." When the dust settled, the bandits discovered that there was no army or huge beast standing in front of the stronghold gate. Instead, there was only a young man wearing iron armor and holding a large bow. The fear in their hearts immediately faded a lot. Someone brandished his saber and shouted, "He's only one person. Everyone, let's attack together and kill him. The stronghold master will reward us handsomely." More than a dozen bandits wielding all sorts of weapons howled as they charged forward. Li Qingshan calmly took out 3 arrows from his quiver and knocked them on the bowstring. In an instant, he pulled the bowstring to its fullest. The bowstring hummed, and the sharp arrows pierced through the 3 bandits at the front with the force of splitting rocks and piercing clouds. They fell to the ground like puppets with their strings cut. Li Qingshan drew his bow like a spring and shot out arrows, killing 12 bandits in a row. "I'll kill you." There were still 4 bandits who charged forward, roaring as they slashed at Li Qingshan's head. Li Qingshan put away his bow and continued forward as if he did not see them. A whirlwind spun around him, carrying with it the sharp edge of a blade. The 4 bandits simultaneously spat out blood from their throats and fell to the ground. One of the bandits was skilled, and when he saw the small blade, he wanted to block it with his saber. However, the small blade cut through his saber like it was tofu. Li Qingshan stepped over the corpses of more than a dozen bandits and continued forward. Finally, he stopped at the empty space in the middle of the stronghold. He saw bandits rushing out from the barracks of every stronghold when they heard the news. They all held torches in their hands, and they were extremely eye-catching in the darkness. He drew his bow and shot out arrows in rapid succession, each one faster than the one before. The effects of the spiritual wine gradually took effect in his body, and he became slightly tipsy. However, it was as if the gods were helping him, and not a single arrow missed its mark. The Hall of Honor landed at the highest point of the Black Wind stronghold. The leaders of the Black Wind stronghold rushed out of the Hall of Honor and looked down from the platform. All of them exclaimed in surprise, "He actually dared to come?" And he came so quickly. Li Qingshan suddenly saw that the bandits were no longer charging forward, but were retreating in an orderly manner. He raised his head and saw Xiong Xiangu. He laughed loudly. "Stronghold Master Xiong, a guest has come, and you, as the host, are so slow. I couldn't wait any longer, so I killed a few dozen of your minions to relieve my boredom. You won't blame me, right?" A gust of true qi gushed out, and the laughter traveled 10 miles, echoing through the mountains and drowning out the sound of the wind and snow. It sounded like thunder in the ears of the bandits, and those who were weaker immediately fell to the ground with cries of pain, blood flowing from their ears. "I accidentally killed a few more." Li Qingshan covered his mouth and burped. The bandits were shocked, and Xiong Xiongwu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The strength of Li Qingshan's inner force was far beyond his imagination, and it seemed to be even more exquisite than normal inner force. It was definitely not like the rumor said, that he was just an external martial arts master. This must be the effect of the spiritual ginseng. "This day next year will be the day you die. No, I will capture you alive and torture you for 7 days and 7 nights. Li Qingshan laughed loudly. "I don't have the leisure to deal with you. Quickly come down and accept your death." He raised his hand to draw his bow, and the smile on his face disappeared. His right hand turned into a blur, and he mechanically executed the action of drawing an arrow. 7 arrows formed a line. It was the rapid arrow technique that he had learned from Drawn Rain's village, and he shot it towards the platform. Dodge! Xiong Xiongwu's warning was too slow. One of the bandits was hit, and he fell from the platform. There were 3 arrows stuck in his body, and he only managed to dodge the first 4. "Sixth boss!" The bandits cried out in alarm. Li Qingshan touched his bow again and found that all 3 quivers had been used up. He tossed the large bow and quiver to the side. He has no more arrows. "Everyone, don't be afraid, kill him." The bandits bellowed out to boost their morale. They swarmed over like a black mass, forming an impenetrable encirclement. Layers upon layers of figures and weapons surged over, drowning Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan hooked the Overlord's spear at his feet, and with a clang, he placed it on his shoulder. He spun around like a whirlwind, and the 140-gene Overlord's spear danced like a black dragon, carrying with it a low hum as it tore through the air. 5 bandits were sent flying at the same time. Either their heads exploded, or their chests were crushed. They could not be more dead. With Li Qingshan's lethal weapon in hand, he was basically a walking death trap. He would never leave a single person alive. The bandits behind him were smashed into the ground, and there was also a series of groans and cries. Li Qingshan looked towards the platform. "Don't let your minions die for nothing. Quickly come and fight me." Xiong Xiangu looked at the casualties of his subordinates, but he did not have the slightest intention of making a move. Instead, he laughed coldly. "Fight you." Looking down from above, he could clearly see a dozen or so bandits dressed in special clothing, mixed in with the crowd, approaching Li Qingshan. They did not raise their weapons like their comrades, but instead lowered them. Li Qingshan's heart trembled. A terrifying killing intent was like a venomous snake baring its fangs. And the experts that he would take seriously were clearly only on the platform. Before he could think carefully, the dozen or so bandits raised their hands and shouted, "Get out of the way." Chapter 57. The bolts tore through the air. They were no weaker than the stone splitter bow. With a clang, they pierced the armor and stabbed into Li Qingshan's body. Li Qingshan immediately froze up. Xiong Xianwu sneered. "Do you really think you're worthy of fighting me? Dying like this would be letting you off easy." He had gone to great lengths to obtain these crossbows. He had spent a great deal of time training these crossbowmen as well. They were the true trump cards of his Black Wind stronghold. He had gone too far. The other organizations of Qingyang City treated him as a thorn in their side. If they were not prepared, they would not be able to sleep at night. Even first-rate masters would struggle to escape death from the sneak attack of over a dozen crossbows. And then, Li Qingshan, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly raised his head and asked. The bolts struck the armor, but they failed to pierce his tendons. He had also become covered in cold sweat. If it were not for the armor, which nullified the force of impact, he definitely would not have been able to block the crossbows with his ox demon forge as its hide. Even with that being the case, it took him quite a while to recover. Crossbows were truly a divine weapon for killing masters. Protect the crossbowmen. Fire again. The second boss ordered loudly. The bandits surged forward, and the crossbowmen changed their bolts in a hurry. Crossbows were easy to use, but they were nowhere near as fast as bows, so they were extremely easy to damage. However, with this kind of command, they could unleash their greatest power. They could command the bandits like an army. Total annihilation. How could Li Qingshan be willing to become a target? He identified the place with the most bandits and used the tyrant's spear style, charging over like a chariot. The might of the spear surged, sucking in over a dozen bandits. He was like a black dragon that had swallowed its prey in a single gulp. When it spat out again, it was over a dozen corpses. With just these people, how could they stop him? Before a crossbowman could even draw the bowstring, his chest was pierced by the spear. His 50-kilogram body was thrown into the air, slamming into another crossbowman in the distance and killing him. Li Qingshan became one with his spear and rushed left and right in the crowd. He only attacked and did not defend. When the swords, spears, swords, and halberds landed on his body, they were immediately repelled by his armor and could not harm him at all. When he swung his great spear, it pierced through the chest and head. In a short moment, he had killed dozens of bandits, and more than half of the crossbowmen had been killed. He stood among the bandits, his iron armor pierced by more than 10 crossbow bolts and soaked in blood. A fierce and murderous aura arose spontaneously, scaring the bandits to death. One of the bandits tried to launch a sneak attack from behind. He turned around and glared at him, a red light flashing in his eyes. Before he could make a move, the bandit's face suddenly turned ashen, and he was scared to death. Xiang Xiangwu's heart ached, and he flew into a rage. Even if he won this time, his vitality would be greatly damaged. The faces of the other leaders were also unsightly. This Li Qingshan's martial arts were so high that it could be said that it was beyond their imagination. The second leader said, "Leader, don't be anxious. This Li Qingshan has a great spear and armor. Although he looks invulnerable and powerful, he has to carry several hundred kilograms of weight. Even if his martial arts are high, he cannot last for long. Why don't we wait until he is tired and then make a move? We can just recruit more subordinates." In a battle between experts, it was rare for a battle to last for 3 days and 3 nights. In fact, it was rare for a battle to last for more than the time it takes to drink a cup of tea. This was because a battle was fierce and dangerous. One careless move could determine life and death. Martial artists had to burst out their physical strength and willpower in an instant, suppressing their opponent with a spurt of energy. Xiong Xianwu calmed his heart. He thought that, even if it was him, after shooting the stone splitter bow dozens of times and charging with this kind of equipment, he would not be able to last long. Even if a person had great abilities, once their physical strength was exhausted, they would be at the mercy of others. This was the fearsomeness of a battle formation. It was not just a saying that ants could bite an elephant to death. However, who would have thought that not only was Li Qingshan not tired, he became more and more courageous as he fought. The gourd of spiritual wine he had drunk had a shocking medicinal effect. As it burned in his body, energy continuously surged out. The overlord's spear in his hand turned into a blur. The spear moved with him as he killed to his heart's content. His entire body was bathed in blood. Furthermore, the ox demon's fist of great strength that he cultivated was not something that a mortal martial art could compare to. The thing that bulls were most praised for was not their strength, but their endurance. Seeing more and more bandits die and corpses litter the ground, the second leader's forehead was covered in sweat. What's going on? The snow was getting heavier and heavier. It was as big as a goose's feather as it fell to the ground, covering thousands of mountains. The bandits that fell towards Li Qingshan were immediately swept away by the fierce spear wind. A bandit was sent flying and landed on the ground, dyeing the snow red. The remaining bandits no longer had the slightest bit of ferocity and retreated in panic. Li Qingshan paused the spear in his hand. What a heavy snow! Xiang Xiangu decisively ordered. Attack! Together with the other leaders, they flew down together. The bandits' morale was immediately boosted. The seventh leader smashed down with his hammer. The air whistled, and before it even smashed down, it brought along a violent gust of wind. Its power was astonishing and terrifying. He was born with great strength that could kill tigers and bears. The second leader said, "Don't fight him head-on. Come at me." Li Qingshan used the move, Overlord carries the cauldron, and the Overlord's spear swept upwards. Clang! A loud sound rang out as the hammer and spear collided. The hammer flew back and smashed into the seventh leader's head, causing his brain to burst out. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the fourth leader whipped at Li Qingshan's waist. The fifth leader used a demon-headed blade to hack at Li Qingshan's back. The second leader, however, used an iron fan to hide in the momentum and viciously pointed at the back of Li Qingshan's unguarded head. However, the most dangerous thing was still Xiang Xiangwu's palm that was reaching for his face. Even if Li Qingshan could block these attacks with his ox demon forges its hide and iron armor, the impact would still be unbearable. His body would slow down, and he would fall into a trap if he was not careful. He finally understood why even a veteran like Lu Hong's expression changed when he said he was going to flatten the Black Wind stronghold. He refused to believe it. The danger was unimaginably great. Ox Demon stomps the ground. An idea occurred to him. True Qi surged into his right foot, and he stomped heavily on the ground. Within a radius of 3 meters, a small earthquake occurred. The ground cracked and sunk, and shockwaves rolled in all directions. Martial arts focused on strength from the ground and rooting under one's feet. As long as one had not become an immortal that could ride the wind and soar the clouds, they would not be able to leave the ground under their feet. The attacks of the leaders were like the wind, but their feet were firmly planted on the ground. As soon as Li Qingshan's foot landed, they immediately became unsteady. They felt a shockwave attack their feet, and they felt dizzy and wanted to vomit blood. Their attacks were also scattered and powerless, and when they landed on Li Qingshan, they were no longer effective. Only Xiang Xiangwu's martial arts were the highest, and his palm and claws still maintained their power. Li Qingshan laughed and quickly retreated, avoiding Xiang Xiangwu's claws. He crashed into the fourth leader behind him, and at the same time, he stabbed his spear at Xiang Xiangwu's chest. The fourth leader screamed in pain. All the bones in his body were shattered, and he was sent flying. Xiang Xianwu pulled back his palm and twisted his body, temporarily avoiding Li Qingshan's dragon-like spear. The fifth leader's martial arts were the weakest, and he had not recovered yet. Li Qingshan let go of the spear and grabbed his head, swinging it to the ground. With a bang, it was like a watermelon being split open, and red and white blood flowed out. He then pulled the Overlord's spear back and held it horizontally in front of him, assuming the stance of the Overlord's cross. In the blink of an eye, he had broken through the attacks of the Black Wind stronghold, and even killed the 4 leaders. Third-rate experts were as weak as children in front of him, unable to withstand a single blow. The remaining bandits were stunned as if they had been immobilized. They did not expect their own stronghold to be so weak as the village they had wreaked havoc in. The snow was getting heavier, and the ground was dyed red with blood. Then, it was covered in snow and frozen, forming a tragic scene of red and white. Chapter 58. Li Qingshan kicked away the corpse by his feet and grinned. It's much quieter now. Come, Chief Xiong, I'll give you a quick death. He tilted his head slightly. And the one behind me. Come at me as well. The second boss, who was dressed like a scholar, no longer had any hint of elegance. The scarf on his head had fallen off, and his entire body was drenched in cold sweat. He had managed to escape from Li Qingshan's hands thanks to his decent movement technique, but his courage had already been shattered. When Li Qingshan glanced at him, he took a step back as if he had been struck by lightning. "Chief, I don't want to die here. I can't let my strategy go to waste." After saying that, the second boss turned around and fled. His body was light, and with a few leaps, he arrived at the entrance of the stronghold. The other bandits scattered as well, fleeing towards the stronghold's entrance. "Trash! All of you are trash." Xiong Xianwu cursed loudly. If it were not for Li Qingshan stopping him, he would have personally killed these traitors. The instant the second boss was about to escape from the Black Wind stronghold, a dark green blade silently slid past his neck. Firstly, he was not as skilled as Yang Anji, and secondly, he had already lost his courage. He only cared about running for his life, so how could he guard against the small blade in the darkness? Blood sprayed out, and his pupils dilated. Even at the moment of his death, he did not know who had killed him. The other fleeing bandits all followed in his footsteps. The pitch-black stronghold's entrance seemed to have become the border of death. Xiong Xianwu could not see what had happened in front of the stronghold's entrance. He could only vaguely hear the sounds of heavy objects falling to the ground. He knew that those people had probably died. He felt a chill run down his spine. "What did you do?" Li Qingshan smiled in a flamboyant manner. "I killed you, of course." After cultivating the path of white bone and great beauty, Little and was no longer afraid of blood. However, just now, when he fought, his killing intent surged into the sky like a battle formation. Little and could only wander around in the surroundings, unable to get close. However, it was perfect for him to launch a sneak attack. Those bandits that were running around in the dark were simply the best prey. They didn't have the slightest ability to fight back before him, and they stretched out their necks one by one to be executed. Xiong Xiangwu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. The foundation he had built up for so many years had been destroyed in a day, destroyed in the hands of this brat. All the mountain bandits were guilty of crimes, and he was the only one left. The large Black Wind stronghold was reduced to a ghostly wasteland in an instant. Only the howling of wind and snow remained. Li Qingshan raised his spear and said, "Come." Staring fixedly at Li Qingshan, Xiong Xianwu reached his trembling hand into his bosom and took out a pale yellow paper talisman with great care. He had obtained this talisman by accident, and it was not easy. It was the real life-saving straw. He did not expect that it would come to this, so he did not have the time to use it. But now, he could not care so much. Li Qingshan could clearly see the bright light on the paper talisman. His heart trembled, and the tip of his spear trembled. True Qi gushed out, and he used the final move of the Overlord Spear technique. It was also the most powerful move, World Domination. He charged forward, piercing through the air. Xiong Xianwu bit the tip of his tongue and spat it on the paper talisman. He flipped his hand and pressed it against his chest. A ball of light exploded, enveloping him. He shouted, "I'm going to kill you." Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The invincible Overlord Spear was blocked by a layer of golden light, unable to move an inch forward. Little and wanted to help Li Qingshan, but under the illumination of the golden light, he could not take a single step forward. Xiong Xianwu grabbed the tip of the spear, and Li Qingshan felt a huge force that was not any weaker than his own. He almost lost control of the spear. He immediately used the ox demon stomps its hooves, and his feet bit the ground. His gaze was as resolute as a dragon, and he did not take a single step back. The two wrestled, and the iron spear, which was as thick as the mouth of a bull, was twisted into an exaggerated arc. The distance between them gradually closed. 5 steps, 3 steps, 1 step. Xiong Xianwu suddenly raised his palm and slapped down on Li Qingshan's head. His hand was shockingly large, like a bear's palm fan. It did not match the proportions of his body, and now it was enveloped in a layer of light, making it seem even larger. Before the palm even arrived, the whistling wind forced Li Qingshan to be unable to breathe. He let go of the overlord's spear and retreated. He was scratched by the edge of the palm, and his heavy armor was torn apart like paper. He felt an intense pain in his chest, and it was even more severe than when he was cut by a sword. Bang! Xiong Xiangu seemed to be unable to control his own strength. He slapped the ground, and a loud sound rang out. The ground collapsed, and the momentum was even greater than Li Qingshan's just now ox demon stomps its hooves. Li Qingshan finally could not help but be shocked. What is this? How could Xiong Xiangu explain? He roared, "It's time for you to die." Vidra Strength Talisman. Once used, it's as if there's a Vidra protecting your body, giving you infinite strength. Oxen appeared out of nowhere and explained indifferently. A bull that could talk. Xiong Xiangu was instantly stunned. "Brother Bull, why are you here?" Oxen said, "Hurry up and kill him, we still have important matters to attend to." "All right." Li Qingshan grabbed the remaining armor on his body and tore it off. He strode toward Xiong Xianwu. "What Vidra protection? Watch me break your turtle shell." Xiong Xianwu's fan-sized palm slammed down, thinking that Li Qingshan was seeking his own death. The true qi in Li Qingshan's body surged violently. Ox Demon Fist of great strength struck out with all his strength. The fist and palm collided, and a loud sound rang out. Under Li Qingshan's feet, the ground collapsed and the rocks shattered. All the bones in his body groaned in pain, and his muscles became numb. However, he did not care and shouted, "Again!" He punched out again. Boom! The giant palm slammed down, and Li Qingshan sank a few more inches into the ground. Xiong Xianwu wanted to smash Li Qingshan into pieces, but Li Qingshan was like a piece of pig iron. No matter how many times he tempered him, he became more and more courageous. The fist and palm clashed more than 10 times, and Li Qingshan's calves were all buried in the ground. Blood seeped out of his mouth and nose, but his expression became more and more determined. Xiong Xianwu was, after all, borrowing external force. Although he had infinite strength, his speed of recovery could not keep up. Finally, he revealed an opening. How could Li Qingshan let go of this opportunity? He punched out again, but it was once again dissolved by the spirit light. "It's useless, you can't hurt me." Xiong Xianwu laughed wildly. "Let's see how many punches you can block." Li Qingshan did not give his opponent any time to breathe. His true qi exploded, and he continued to punch out more than 10 times. The spirit light trembled and became fainter. Xiong Xianwu retreated, and a trace of blood seeped out of the corner of his mouth. Clearly, the spirit light could not completely dissolve the fist force, and his lungs were injured. Xiong Xianwu was beaten until he knelt on one knee. He angrily and unwillingly said, "You die." Li Qingshan pulled out the flying dragon sword on his back and poured all of his true qi into it. The sword vibrated, and a foot-long sword ray appeared. He slashed down with all his strength, cutting into the spirit light. After a moment of hesitation, it smoothly cut down. A head fell to the ground, and it spun a few times. There was still shock and fear on its face. Li Qingshan raised the sword and said, "The Black Wind Stronghold's leader has been beheaded. The Black Wind Stronghold has been destroyed." Then he flicked the sword. What a good sword! He did not use this sword from the start, but first used his fists to consume the spirit light of the talisman. Otherwise, when the spirit light was at its peak, not only would he not be able to kill Xiong Xianwu, but he would also destroy the sword. Although according to Oxen, this was also a fake spirit weapon that did not make the grade, at least it was more practical. Brother Nyo, what is the important matter you mentioned? Chapter 59. Only then did Li Qingshan remember what Oxen had said. Using beast blood was only a temporary measure to cultivate the path of white bone and great beauty. If he truly wanted to cultivate it, he needed human blood, and it had to be human blood that had just died and was still warm. The stronger the blood, the better. These bandits were great materials that Oxen had mentioned. Although he did not dare to agree, he did not mind it too much. He moved the corpses of the bandits over and piled them up into a small mountain on the empty ground. The scene was horrifying, and the stench of blood was thick and pungent. Even Li Qingshan himself felt rather shaken. He could not help but ask himself, did I do this? However, he immediately calmed down. This was karma. If these bandits did not end up like this, then the world would be unfair. As long as he had a clear conscience, there was no need for him to feel conflicted or regret. Afterwards, he followed Oxen's instructions and placed the jar containing Little Anne's white bones upside down on the mountain of corpses. Little Anne danced around nervously until he heard Li Qingshan say, "Go." He turned into a breeze and dove into the jar. The mountain of corpses trembled. The blood that had been flowing downwards suddenly began to flow backwards towards the jar. The jar also began to tremble violently, and the stench of blood grew fainter and fainter. After a long while, there was a series of cracking sounds. Cracks appeared on the jar, revealing streaks of red light, as if they were congealing blood. Li Qingshan frowned and held his breath. The scene before him seemed too much like some kind of terrifying and evil ritual. It was as if some kind of demon was about to be born. With a bang, the jar exploded. A blood-red skeleton sat on the mountain of corpses. 2 balls of blood-red flames burned in its eye sockets. It was clearly an extremely strange and terrifying scene, but the little skeleton's hands were pressed together like an old monk sitting in meditation. It actually gave off a holy feeling of enlightenment, as if it had seen through life and death. The horrifying mountain of corpses vaguely seemed like a lotus throne where a Buddha sat in meditation. The pale white arms that stretched out were like pure white lotus petals. It was extremely strange. Li Qingshan called out tentatively, "Little Anne." The little skeleton raised its head and the blood flames flickered. It turned into a blood shadow and pounced over. Its speed was so fast that even Li Qingshan was taken aback. This was even faster than Yang Anji's lightness skills. He instinctively wanted to block or even counterattack, but he stopped himself and allowed the little skeleton to barge into his arms. It then slammed into his chest with a thud and slid down. Li Qingshan didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He saw that Little Anne had fallen to the ground and was shaking her head. She looked like she couldn't control her speed at all. Little Anne stood up and looked up at Li Qingshan. From his eyes, he saw his current appearance. It was as if he suddenly realized that he was no longer a ghost. He looked down at his tiny, bony hands and then at his body. Then he began to tremble violently. Then he squatted on the ground and covered his face with his hands. Although there wasn't any sound coming out, Li Qingshan could clearly feel that he was crying. As a ghost, at least he still had a human form. No one would be able to remain calm after turning into such a horrifying, inhuman appearance. Not to mention that he was just a child. Li Qingshan felt a pain in his heart. His heart that was as hard as iron in the massacre suddenly softened. He rubbed his sour nose and squatted down with a smile. He touched Little Anne's head and said, "Why are you like this? Aren't you pretty cute? In the past, only you could touch me, and I couldn't touch you. Now it's fair." Little Anne raised his head. The blood flames in his eye sockets were a little brighter. He stretched out his arms and gently hugged Li Qingshan. He put his head on Li Qingshan's chest. Li Qingshan spread out his arms and hugged him tightly. In the wind and snow, under the mountain of corpses, a teenager and a small skeleton were hugging each other. They seemed to feel a kind of warmth from each other's cold bodies. Oxen looked on silently from the side. There was no longer the usual mocking look in his eyes. Little Anne had the temperament of a child after all. His mood quickly improved. He curiously experimented with his new body. One moment, he would randomly walk on the ground. The next moment, he would pick up a single blade that the bandits had dropped and swing it wildly. Sometimes he would leap several feet into the air, but inevitably, he would fall down with a thud and fall to the ground. Li Qingshan was greatly alarmed. He was afraid that Little Anne would fall and shatter his slender bones. However, he saw Little Anne turn over and stand up. Scratching his head, he remembered that he was no longer a ghost and couldn't fly. However, he wasn't disappointed and continued to run wildly in the wind and snow. Only then did Li Qingshan relax. He revealed a smile. Perhaps it was because he loved the house and its crow. He really didn't think that Little Anne was scary. The little skeleton's various childish movements actually had a strange kind of cuteness. However, other people definitely wouldn't think so. He turned to Oxen and asked, "Is little and going to be like this for the rest of his life?" Oxen said, "There's nothing wrong with this. How many people pray to the gods and Buddha to become like this, yet they still can't?" However, allowing a in spirit to cultivate a physical body is something that normal people can forget about. Although it's an ability of the demonic path, it isn't countered by any Buddhist or Taoist arts. Moreover, it progresses at a godly speed and is extraordinarily powerful. If this ability were to spread, I guarantee that it would be 10,000 times more effective than the spiritual ginseng in your possession. Whether it's Buddhists, Taoists, or demons, they would all come to steal it. If someone else gave you a feast, could you still blame the cutlery for not being good? Li Qingshan could only smile bitterly. I knew it. The path of white bone and great beauty sounds much more powerful than the strength of 9 oxen and 2 tigers. Not only was it so fast that he almost failed to react to it, but when he turned around, he saw Little and swinging the 7th boss's huge metal hammer that weighed around 50 kilograms. Then, due to his hands being too small, he lost his grip on the handle. The metal hammer flew several dozen meters away and crashed into a wall. The current Little and could slaughter the entire Black Wind stronghold alone. He would definitely be able to do so with even more ease than Li Qingshan. Moreover, the master of the Black Wind stronghold had somehow found a talisman that could contend against his strength of 1 ox. For a bandit leader like him to obtain it, it definitely could not be anything impressive. He could not help but feel a hint of doubt towards the strength of 9 oxen and 2 tigers. He absorbed the essence blood of over 100 people, so of course he's not weak. If he wants to revert to human form, it's actually not difficult. Oxen snickered and changed the topic, ignoring Li Qingshan's doubts. As expected, Li Qingshan threw his own matters to the back of his mind. Is that true? What should I do? Oxen said, firstly, once you cultivate the path of white bone and great beauty to a certain level, you'll be able to transform into anything. You'll be able to transform into anything you want. Li Qingshan nodded. The Buddhists speak of skeletons made of powder. They've always been able to see through reality and illusion, but this probably isn't something that can be achieved in a short period of time. After all, it's an illusion. Oxen said, there's another shortcut. That's by using the blood of others. Before long, you'll be able to regrow flesh from white bones, regrow flesh, and reconstruct a physical body. Li Qingshan said in shock, doesn't that mean Little and has come back to life? Oxen shook his head. He's neither alive nor dead, neither dead nor alive, but from a mortal's point of view, there's no difference from coming back to life. All right. Li Qingshan felt excited. Don't celebrate too early. You'll have to handle this troublesome matter. You can't expose him before everyone and leave behind too many traces. Otherwise, don't blame me for not warning you when people come knocking on your door to purge demons. Chapter 60. Oxen said nothing more. Only when Li Qingshan turned around did he say, you can practice the tiger demon's fist of bone forging once you get back. Training an ox without training a tiger still isn't an ability. Li Qingshan paused, but he did not stop. No matter where this path led to, he would continue onwards without looking back. It was for himself, as well as for the child in front of him. Oxen placed all of his attention on Li Qingshan. He had taught Little and the path of white bone and great beauty because of Li Qingshan. Was the strength of 9 oxen and 2 tigers he had taught Li Qingshan really just a clumsy, mediocre ability? Li Qingshan searched through the Black Wind stronghold for spoils of war. Little and followed behind him with a series of thuds. Very soon, he found a granary. The granary was filled with food that had been plundered from various villages, prepared for winter. Who knew how many people had died of hunger and cold? Afterwards, he found a warehouse filled with various miscellaneous items, as well as an armory. The warehouse was mostly filled with things like alcohol, meat, salt, and so on. The armory was filled with regular weapons, and none of them were on par with the soaring dragon sword in his hand, so he did not take them seriously. However, he was unable to find the most important treasury no matter how he searched. Instead, he found quite a lot of silver and banknotes in the rooms of the various bosses. The Black Wind stronghold had been in Qingyang for many years, so who knew how much gold and silver they had accumulated? There might even be talismans among them. In the end, it was Little and who was more meticulous. He discovered an extremely well-hidden mechanism in Xiang Xiangwu's bedroom. Activating the mechanism, a secret door appeared. Opening the secret door, the gold and silver utensils shone with jewels and jewels, almost dazzling him. A wooden box contained a stack of silver banknotes, which amounted to over 10,000 taels. However, the most valuable items were probably the paintings and antiques that he could not name. Even Li Qingshan felt rather dazzled. He casually picked up an item, yet he would spend half a day admiring and fiddling with it, highlighting his true colors of a country bumpkin. Even with his 2 lives combined, he had never seen so much gold and silver. Unfortunately, he couldn't find the other talisman after searching for a while. He thought that if Xiang Xiangwu really had such a good thing, he would have kept it with him as a trump card. He wouldn't have left it in such a place to rot. He couldn't help but feel a little regretful. Little and didn't care about the gold, silver, and jewelry, as if he was tired of playing with weapons. Instead, he took out the paintings from the big porcelain bottle in the corner of the treasury and looked at them. However, he didn't look like he was playing with them. Instead, he looked at them seriously. Some of the scrolls were just thrown to the ground after a single glance, as if they were fakes. Li Qingshan went up, but he saw that the paintings were either elegant landscapes, flowers, birds, and people, or they were written in some strange calligraphy style. He couldn't understand 9 out of 10 words. In any case, they were all ancient, and he couldn't tell the difference. Suddenly, he remembered that he was basically illiterate in this world. There was no chance for him to learn in the mountain village, nor was there a need for him to learn. He probably couldn't even recognize all the words. He would have to make up for this when he had the chance. However, he was very surprised. "You can understand them?" Little and nodded. Although he couldn't speak, he gestured at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan understood very quickly. As it turned out, Little and had remembered many things after he achieved initial mastery of the path of white bone and great beauty and turned into a skeleton. Li Qingshan clicked his tongue and said, "Looks like you might be able to remember where your home is very soon. You can appreciate paintings at such a young age, so you must have a very profound family background. Perhaps you're not from an ordinary wealthy family." Hearing Li Qingshan say that, Little and became confused instead. Even though he was naive, he knew that his current appearance was shameful. Even if he could find his way back to his home, would he be able to see his family? Li Qingshan comforted him. "Don't worry, I have a way. You'll be fine very soon. I guarantee that you'll be no different from other children." Little and immediately became happy. Although he had no idea what Li Qingshan's method was, he trusted him instinctively. Hearing this from outside, Oxen was surprised. This was not just from an ordinary wealthy family. This little ghost soul had clearly been cleansed and strengthened by someone's power, which was why it was so tough. He was able to withstand the witch's random refinement, and his soul did not disperse. Instead, he had the ability to control objects. Perhaps Li Qingshan did not know, but Oxen knew very well just how high the path of white bone and great beauty demanded in terms of talent. Even he was rather surprised that Little and was able to grasp it so smoothly. This was probably not just because he was talented, but because he had used some sort of spiritual medicine or technique to awaken his spiritual intelligence. Little and unfurled another scroll painting, and a spiritual light suddenly rose up in the room, overshadowing the brilliance of all the gold, silver, and jewels. Li Qingshan felt a chill in his heart. He sensed an extremely sharp sword chi assaulting him. It was actually 10 times more terrifying than when he faced Yang Anji's fatal strike in the restaurant. He instinctively grabbed Little and pulled him behind him. The scroll painting fell to the ground, but it did not unleash the terrifying attack he had imagined. After resting for a moment, Li Qingshan carefully picked up the scroll, only to find that it was not a painting, but calligraphy. The calligraphy was extremely messy, and he could not even recognize a single word. It did not really look like cursive calligraphy. There were no characters in the entire scroll, only random strokes and strokes. However, the force of the strokes penetrated the back of the paper, making it look extremely imposing. Every single stroke was like a sword mark left behind by a supreme swordsman on a stone wall. There was a depth to it that would not be worn away even with the passage of time. Oxen said, "Kid, you're quite lucky. You actually found a true spiritual artifact." A spiritual artifact. Li Qingshan was overjoyed. He played with the scroll painting in his hand, his heart filled with joy. He rubbed Little N's bony head. "What a good little N." Little N saw that he was happy and also lowered his head in joy. "How do I use this thing?" Oxen said, "Try injecting your true qi into it." Li Qingshan had fought a great battle in the Black Wind stronghold. He had mainly relied on his own strength, so he did not consume much of his true qi. He still had more than half of it left. However, when he tried to inject his true qi into the scroll painting, the true qi in his body poured out like crazy, and all his true qi was sucked into the scroll painting. When his true qi was completely depleted, a stroke on the scroll just now lit up. With a flash of light, a skimming flew out, passing through a gold and silver treasure chest, and landed on the stone wall of the secret room. There was no shocking sound. After a while, the treasure chest split into two. Only then did Li Qingshan come back to his senses. He went forward to take a look, and saw that as long as the skimming passed by the gold and silver ingots, they would all be cut in half. The cut surface was clean and shiny. He then went to check the stone wall, and found that there was an extremely thin and deep mark on the thick stone wall. Chapter 61. Li Qingshan finally understood why Oxen didn't like the shining knife, and even disdained the flying dragon sword, which was regarded as a godly weapon by ordinary people. Compared with real spiritual weapons, they were indeed inferior. If Xiong Xianggu used this spiritual weapon, he would be the one who died here today. However, ordinary martial artists would not be able to see this spiritual light. The antique calligraphy and paintings here were not collected by Xiong Xianggu, that uncouth man. Instead, it was the second boss who was dressed like a scholar. He could see that this calligraphy was somewhat extraordinary, but he could not tell what was so extraordinary about it. Even if he could see it, ordinary martial artists couldn't use spiritual weapons with their internal energy. Xiong Xianggu had to bite his tongue and use his blood to activate the magic charms. Once this scroll was rolled up, it didn't show any light, which benefited Li Qingshan. Oxen said, "It seems that this spiritual weapon is not complete, but only a part." Li Qingshan took a look. Indeed, many strokes were broken at the edge of the paper, as if they were cut by someone. Oxen had a good eye. This spiritual weapon doesn't seem to be made on purpose, but more like it was drawn randomly. The sword chi and sword momentum were integrated into the tip of the brush to stimulate the sword chi. If you want to, you might be able to learn a sword art from it. Also, once a spiritual weapon is cut, it will be destroyed. The person who wrote this calligraphy is really something. Li Qingshan knew Oxen's temperament very well. He was always arrogant, so saying something was already a great comment. Li Qingshan looked at the calligraphy more carefully, trying to learn a sword art from it. He thought that since Sherpatian, as an illiterate, could understand the Ode to the Gallant, which even the martial artists couldn't understand, he, as a semi-illiterate, should have some advantage. However, he couldn't find anything. The more he looked, the more he felt it was powerful, so he had to give up. Little and stared at the scroll, and the bloody flame flickered. Suddenly, he picked up a scroll on the ground and waved it in the air. A gust of wind rose in the treasury, and the scroll brought up a series of afterimages, making whooshing sounds in the air. It was as if the scroll in Little N's hand was not a scroll, but a real sword. The little skeleton holding the scroll and waving it around should have been strange and amusing, but in Li Qingshan's eyes, he could faintly see an elegant swordsman waving his sword around. He couldn't help but murmur, "Fairy tales are all lies. What do you mean by an illiterate learning martial arts faster? It's all nonsense." Oxen glanced at Li Qingshan and clicked his tongue. Comprehension. Li Qingshan didn't think that his comprehension was bad. He had made rapid progress in the ox demon's fist of great strength and had even been praised by oxen. If it wasn't a problem with him, then it could only be said that Little Ant's comprehension was really too high. Of course, it might also be because he knew calligraphy. After Little Ant finished the last move, he resolutely put away his sword. The scroll broke into pieces and turned to dust. Then, he looked at Li Qingshan. Although he couldn't even make an expression, the bloody flame was clearly flashing with the emotion of "come and praise me." Li Qingshan touched his skull. So smart. Little Ant immediately became happy. Seeing that Li Qingshan was a little hurt, he wrote on his palm, "I'll teach you." Li Qingshan smiled. "All right then, it seems that I still have a lot to learn. But first, I'll help you find a new home." From the antique vases, he found a thick porcelain jar and weighed it. "It seems too small." Shawan split up into pieces again and flew in with a clatter, which made Li Qingshan leap in fright. He glanced into the jar and saw a tiny skull with a pair of blood-red flames staring at him with great interest. All right, he thought that raising a little ghost was strange enough, but now it seemed to be getting stranger and stranger. He said, "Good night," and sealed the jar. Li Qingshan picked up the jar and stuffed the banknotes into his bosom. He only brought the scroll out. Then, he sealed the secret room again. Finally, he found some kerosene. Other than the granary and the warehouse, he sprinkled it on every camp and started a big fire. Since ancient times, killing and arson were always linked together. Even in the wind and snow, the fire quickly spread. In the blink of an eye, it had become a huge fire, causing Li Qingshan's face to turn red. Li Qingshan then sprinkled the kerosene on the mountain of corpses. No one knew if these corpses, which had their essence blood sucked out by Little Ant, would be noticed by others. So, he decided to just burn them as well. On the mountain path, after a difficult night of marching, the bandit hunting squad finally neared the Black Wind stronghold. Just when Huang Binga thought it was too late, a red light suddenly shone from the horizon. He was shocked. Could it be? He immediately ordered, "Hurry up." After crossing a mountain ridge, Huang Binga was stunned. Lu Hong was also stunned. Even the people who had rushed to the mountain ridge with them were speechless. The insufferably arrogant and infamous Black Wind stronghold was currently burning, turning into a sea of fire. Could it be that this was all done by that person? This question arose in everyone's hearts. After recovering from their shock, the squad charged down the mountain ridge at their fastest speed. They arrived in front of the Black Wind stronghold and hesitantly passed through the broken stronghold gate. Then, they saw a scene that they would never be able to forget for the rest of their lives. Within the sea of fire, the snow on the plaza was dyed bright red by blood and flames. All sorts of broken weapons were stabbed into the ground. Li Qingshan sat in the center, repairing himself. Behind him was a mountain of burning corpses. 400 to 500 people stopped. Huang Bingu and Lu Hong were no exception. This youth exuded an aura that made people not dare to approach him, as if he was a demon god. Li Qingshan opened his eyes. "You're here." 2 balls of fire were reflected in his clear eyes, but it made people feel as if the fire had been ignited from the bottom of his heart. No one answered him. Li Qingshan had killed people, set fires, and tested arcane artifacts. He had completely depleted all of his physical strength and true qi. As soon as he sat down, he felt a deep sense of exhaustion, so he just meditated and rested. Within the sea of fire, the best place for him to rest was this empty space. Even he had never thought he would give others such an impact. As a regular person, Yi Dachuan did not understand as much as Huang Bingu and Lu Hong. He went up and asked, "Did you do all of this?" However, he never dared to look at the mountain of corpses behind Li Qingshan the entire time. The scorching sensation and the smell of roasted meat made him dizzy. Li Qingshan nodded and leapt up. Li Qingshan has destroyed the Black Wind stronghold here. I have fulfilled my promise to the people of Crouching Ox Village, to Sir, and to myself. Huang Bingu and Lu Hong, on the other hand, noticed the crossbows among the scattered weapons. They understood the terror of these things the best. Just what kind of martial arts gave him such strength? Lu Hong knew he could not do what Li Qingshan had done. Even if the bandits did not move at all and lined up for him to hit, he would still be exhausted, not to mention that the bandits wielded various weapons and had many masters watching over them. Chapter 62. Thank you, everyone, for your assistance. Li Qingshan thanked Yi Dachuan, Huang Binggu, and Lu Hong one by one. No matter what their motives were, help was help, and their reward was the remaining granaries, warehouses, and armory of the Black Wind stronghold. As for the treasury, it had always been well hidden. With the fire, even the secret door had been destroyed. If they wanted to enter again, they could only move the rubble, find the right position, and force their way in. Everyone in the bandit hunting army was beaming with joy and sighed in relief. They had originally been worried, thinking that they would have to fight the Black Wind Mountain bandits to the death. Now, they could move the spoils of war without a drop of blood on their swords. It was great. They could even brag to others when they returned. Yi Dachuan, Huang Binggu, Lu Hong, and Li Qingshan stood together and watched everyone move the items. Li Qingshan seemed to be the leader. Other than the wine gourd at his waist and the flying dragon sword on his back, Li Qingshan also had a new porcelain jar at his waist and a painting scroll on his back. Naturally, the porcelain jar contained little and he had absorbed the essence blood of so many bandits in one go, so he needed some time to digest and absorb it. As for the painting scroll, it was a spirit artifact he had obtained. Because it was calligraphy and could emit sword chi, he named it the cursive sword calligraphy. These two items attracted the attention of the other three, but he did not say, and no one tactfully asked. No matter what it was his spoils of war, and he could not allow others to touch it. Li Qingshan said, "Chief Hunting's injuries are not serious, right?" Huang Binggu said, "Don't worry, my blade is accurate. There won't be any injuries." Li Qingshan was startled, and then he laughed loudly. As expected of an experienced person, the human heart was complicated. It was moved by emotions and changed by benefits. There was falsehood in the truth and truth in the falsehood. Right and wrong, gratitude and grudges could not be calculated, and there was no need to. With a smile, all gratitude and grudges were forgotten. Huang Binggu also laughed loudly, but he suddenly withdrew his smile. But the difficult part is yet to come. Little Black walked up and bowed deeply to this person who was about the same age as him. "I've let you down." Today's scene had thoroughly shocked him. If such a person became an enemy of the Drawn Rains village, how terrifying would that be? Li Qingshan patted his shoulder and walked out of Black Wind stronghold. It's almost daybreak. Beyond the layers of red clouds, a bright light appeared in the east, and the fire was gradually extinguished. Li Qingshan suddenly stopped in his tracks. "By the way, hunting chief, did the nickname Descended Tiger come from you? Maybe?" Huang Binggu did not expect him to say this. Li Qingshan said, "Can you change it?" Huang Binggu was startled, then smiled bitterly. This kind of name was spread among the people of the Jianghu. He had merely happened to be there, so how could he have the right to change it? Li Qingshan didn't know that he would soon have a new title. Black Tiger Li Qingshan. Yi Dachuan felt a deep regret at not being able to find the treasury of the Black Wind stronghold in the end, but he did not show it on his face. Occasionally, his gaze would meet the advisors, and they were both excited and overjoyed. A great merit, a great merit. Even though it was Li Qingshan's doing, Li Qingshan was the constable he had found, so he, as the county magistrate, could not miss out on the credit. He was already imagining the expression of his cheap brother-in-law, who looked down on him, when he received the news. "Ha ha ha ha, the Black Wind stronghold that several county magistrates could not quell was quelled by me as soon as I took office." Yi Dachuan laughed wildly and patted Li Qingshan's shoulder. "Of course, this is all thanks to you, Constable Li. I will definitely report this to the magistrate, who is my brother-in-law, to commend you for your contributions and help you get promoted and rich." Ha 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 ha. Constable Li? Li Qingshan only just remembered that he had this title. He smiled and said, "Thank you, Lord Yi, for your praise." Not a problem, not a problem." The army set off to return to the city. Li Qingshan had nothing to do, so he followed the army slowly. Along the way, everyone discovered that he was not as terrifying as they had imagined him to be. They gradually gathered around him, calling him Constable and Young Hero. Even Li Qingshan, who had never experienced such treatment before, felt extremely satisfied. Compared to his mediocrity in his past life, the Crouching Ox village was in dire straits. This was what a good man should be like. He definitely did not pretend to be aloof or be indifferent to fame and fortune. Not only did he love fame and fortune, but he also loved wine, meat, and beauties. He had everything in the world. Huang Binga bid farewell and returned to the Drawn Rains village to retrieve the tiger bone alcohol that Li Qingshan wanted. Li Qingshan said, "If you have any ginseng, feel free to send it over. I'm willing to buy it for a high price." After dealing with this matter, he could truly begin practicing the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. Although Oxen was very secretive about it, Li Qingshan could sense that this ordinary-looking ability contained mysteries that he had yet to comprehend. And, even if it really was just an ordinary ability, it was not something that any martial arts could compare to. It was extremely important to him. Although he was greedy for fame and fortune, he wasn't blinded by it. Tao Taran had forgotten where he was. The current prosperity was just the calm before the storm. There were more and bigger challenges ahead. If he didn't prepare in advance, he would be defeated. However, not only did he not feel fear, but he even became slightly excited. He was just short of yelling for the storm to come even fiercer. This was the life that he had chosen. Although the roads were easy to travel during the day, they were unable to move quickly because they were carrying a great pile of supplies. Only when evening arrived did the group arrive at the city gates of Qingyang City. Just now, did they hear the deafening sound of gongs and firecrackers? Li Qingshan asked, "Is there a festival today?" Lu Hong said, "No, it must be to welcome you. The district magistrate has sent people back to report this beforehand." Sure enough, as soon as they entered the city, a warm aura flooded their faces. Despite it being winter, the streets were packed with people. What had happened in Qingyang City last night had shocked everyone in the city. As a result, everyone had been rather absent-minded during the day. Only when the news arrived did the entire city erupt into an uproar. Li Qingshan smiled and welcomed the crowd. At the same time, he could clearly sense a few hostile gazes from the tea house on the side of the street. He thought, "They've come so quickly. Frogs at the bottom of a well. We've just destroyed a stronghold. Senior brother, when do we do it?" In the tea house, a woman in blue with a plain appearance, but brimming with arrogance said, "There's no hurry. Let's wait a little longer." The senior brother who sat before her was a horse-faced man in his 30s. He was in his 30s, but his fingers were long and slender. His waist bulged and his eyes shone brightly. He could tell with a single glance that he was a master of hidden weapons with great inner force. "We've made it just in time. If the news spreads, who knows how many people will come to steal it. Why don't we strike first and gain the upper hand? I don't think I can kill 200 bandits by myself. The descended tiger is in full swing right now, so he'll be difficult to deal with." The horse-faced man shook his head. They had only managed to come across this opportunity in Qingyang City, so they wanted to take advantage of it. Chapter 63. It's better to be cautious in the Jianghu. It's better not to get the spiritual ginseng than to put yourself in danger. There are other people here. Let them test the waters first. The long-faced man's earnest advice only made the lady in blue look down on him. "Master said that you have to listen to me when you're outside." The long-faced man was also angry. "If you want to die, go ahead. Don't drag me down. If you're not Master's daughter, I would have left long ago." He was deeply aware of the dangers of the Jianghu. If he was not careful, even if he managed to get the spiritual ginseng, he would probably be killed. If Li Qingshan was a clever person, he would immediately offer up the spiritual ginseng, or he would be dead for sure. No, even if he did offer it up, the person who received it would definitely silence him to prevent the news from leaking out and being hunted down by everyone. The long-faced man looked at Li Qingshan in the crowd as if he was looking at a dead man. He took a sip of tea. Even if he couldn't get the spiritual ginseng, it would be a wonderful thing to see such a lucky young talent die in the dangerous Jianghu. It was the restaurant where the intense battle had taken place last night again. Li Qingshan sat in the seat of honor, receiving the fearful gazes of the aristocrats and cup after cup of fine alcohol. When he drank a cup, he suddenly stopped and looked at the rippling alcohol in the cup. Following his movement, the restaurant quietened down. An aristocrat asked carefully, "What's wrong?" Li Qingshan said lightly, "This wine is poisoned." He casually poured the wine on the ground. White smoke immediately rose, showing the intensity of the poison. This poison was colorless and odorless. If he hadn't activated his spiritual eyes and been careful enough to see the strangeness in the wine, he would have been poisoned by now. The aristocrat's face turned pale. He was the one who poured the wine for Li Qingshan just now. He hurriedly waved his hand and said, "It wasn't me." Li Qingshan suddenly stood up. When the aristocrat was about to cry for help, he saw Li Qingshan look at the waiter at the side. "You're the one who poisoned it, right?" This was almost beast-like intuition, a sensitive reaction to killing intent and hostility. "I don't think I've seen him before." "He's not the waiter here," an aristocrat said. The waiter panicked and cried out for his innocence. Suddenly, he saw a fist hurtling towards him. Before the fist had even arrived, the gust of wind from it had already rushed over, suffocating him. He could no longer afford to hide anymore. A dagger slid out of his sleeve and stabbed towards Li Qingshan's abdomen viciously. With a dull thud, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking, the waiter's chest caved in. His body flew out of the building and landed on the street. He still held the knife tightly, its tip bent. Li Qingshan behaved as if nothing had happened. He turned around and said, "Let's keep drinking." He knew this was not even an appetizer. But no one could drink. Li Qingshan said, "Sir Yi, the sect master of the Dragon's Gate sect, Yang Anji, has publicly assaulted and killed an official, and he's now fled. Have you issued a warrant for his arrest?" Yi Dachuan said, "Yes, yes, yes. I will definitely mention this in the official document I send to the prefect. We cannot stay for long in a den of bandits like the Dragon's Gate sect. As a constable, I am willing to wipe out the Dragon's Gate sect and capture Yang Anji. What do you think, Lord Master?" The aristocrats were horrified. The Dragon's Gate sect was probably going to follow in the footsteps of the Black Wind stronghold. Fortunately, most of them had summoned their descendants back as soon as possible. Yi Dachuan looked at the sky and said, "Is it too late?" Li Qingshan said, "Thank you for your concern, Lord Master. I'll be back soon." Since he could not drink, he would find something to do. He would not let the culprit behind all this go, the Dragon's Gate sect. He would not give his enemies a chance to rest and recuperate. Comrade Lei Feng had once taught us to treat our comrades as warm as spring and our enemies as cruel and merciless as winter. The Dragon's Gate sect sat on the Dragon's Gate mountain 5 kilometers away from the city. When Li Qingshan left the city gates, he did not take the main road. Instead, he made his way up the Dragon's Gate in a hurry. As soon as he made it out of the city gates, 2 black figures tailed him, but they were not the senior brother and junior sister. They just happened to be in the vicinity of Qingyang City and had heard the news of the spiritual ginseng. The waiter who had poisoned the spiritual ginseng happened to be their companion. He had been waiting below the restaurant the entire time, waiting to poison Li Qingshan to death and flee immediately after obtaining the spiritual ginseng. If they failed, the 3 of them would take action together. However, all they saw was the waiter's corpse being tossed out. Afterwards, Li Qingshan leapt out of the window as well, heading straight out of the city. They looked at one another. "He's escaping." They could not help but follow him. Although the straight-line distance was 5 kilometers, he had to traverse mountains and ridges along the way, so it was not a measly 5 kilometers. Li Qingshan strode forward, leaving behind a deep footprint with each step. When he came across ditches and ridges, he would slow down and stop for a moment. As it seemed, there was a reason why people described him as clumsy and heavy. This was because the ox demon's fist of great strength focused on practicing the body, not qi. It did not have any techniques to lighten the body or lift qi at all. He only channeled true qi into his feet instinctively when he ran, allowing him to move slightly faster. But at this moment, his situation was a little special. His spine was twisted in a strange way, and he kept adjusting his body as he ran, as if he was stretching his waist. His neck was also constantly twisting, and he was also panting heavily. His heart was beating like a drum, and white steam rose from his body, but it was actually his sweat. Running should have been effortless for him, but he actually felt like he was bearing a great burden. However, his footsteps became faster and faster. With each step, he seemed more graceful. His body bent forward as his arms drooped down. He was like a humanoid wild beast, running through the forest faster and faster. In the pitch-black forest, the trees rapidly approached him before being quickly thrown behind again. Suddenly, a precipitous hill that stood 20 to 30 meters tall appeared before him. If it were him in the past, he definitely would have stopped and thought about how he could make his way around it or climb up. But now, not only did he not stop, but he even sped up towards the hill. As soon as he reached the bottom of the hill, he lowered his body and pushed off with his feet, leaping up. He extended his hands and grabbed two protruding rocks. With another push, he leapt up the hill. The entire movement was completed in a single stroke, just like a vicious tiger scaling a mountain. This form was the tiger demon climbs the mountain from the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. Oxen had already passed on the tiger demon's fist of bone forging to Li Qingshan. He had spent the entire time on his way back to Qingyang City studying it. With the accumulation from the ox demon's fist of great strength, it was much easier. He grasped the method very quickly and experimented with it as he ran. These were the three most basic forms of the 9 forms of the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. The tiger demon flexes its spine, the tiger demon stretches its back, and the tiger demon bumps its head. These were the foundations of the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. The other forms used them as a foundation. Chapter 64. However, increasing the burden on his body wasn't a bad thing. In fact, it was a great thing. Although Ox Demon's fist of great strength bestowed extraordinary strength, endurance, and defensive abilities, he often felt that it was a waste. His strength was great, but if he wasn't fast enough, it would be useless if he couldn't land a hit. That was why he had no choice but to take the risk when dealing with Yang Anji. With greater endurance, he could hold out for longer, but in a life-and-death battle, it was all about the speed of a spark and myriad changes in the blink of an eye. If he didn't land a hit, he would flee 1,000 miles away. There weren't many opportunities to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. With a strong defense, he could bully experts who used their fists, but if he used a sword or sharp blade, he might not be able to withstand the so-called needle-pricking cowhide. Moreover, it was better to hit someone than to take a beating. However, Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging solved these problems from the root. It allowed him to explode his strength and stamina in an instant, greatly increasing his speed. Other than Tiger Demon climbs the mountain, there were 2 other forms of Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging. Tiger Demon leaps over the ravine and Tiger Demon descends the mountain. They contained all the movements of leaping up and down, pouncing forward and retreating. It was truly like a ferocious tiger passing through the forest, coming and going like the wind. Li Qingshan stopped in his tracks and let his wildly beating heart slowly calm down. He closed his eyes and tried to comprehend the feeling of just now. At the same time, he was also waiting. The 2 black figures' Qinggong was actually quite good. After a while, they walked out of the forest. Using the bright snowy light, they immediately saw Li Qingshan on the hillside. At the same time, they felt a fierce and dangerous aura. Li Qingshan stood with his arms crossed. "You're just 2 third-rate masters, yet you're bold enough to chase after me. How bold of you. Since you've come, then leave your lives behind." Before the 2 of them could reply, he immediately shifted from stillness to lunge down. Tiger Demon descends the mountain. The descended tiger, Li Qingshan. However, the 2 of them remembered Li Qingshan's nickname at the same time. Not only did Li Qingshan find this nickname unpleasant, but even they found it hilariously tacky when they first heard it. However, when the shadow approached them, neither of them could laugh. They hated themselves for believing in the rumors and getting greedy. They didn't expect Li Qingshan, a fledgling, to be so strong. Yang Anji released the news of the spiritual ginseng, but he definitely wouldn't mention the scandal of him being played mahjong. As for the matter of Li Qingshan destroying the Black Wind's stronghold by himself, because it was too bizarre, they didn't believe it either. They only saw Li Qingshan return to the city with 2 famous experts and several hundred people. It was already too late to escape. Tiger Demon steals heart. Li Qingshan's hands formed claws and pierced into their chests. With a grab and pull, he pulled out 2 blood-red hearts that were still beating. In addition to the 3 basic moves of strength training, Tiger Demon flexes its spine, Tiger Demon stretches its waist, and Tiger Demon touches its head, there were also the 3 sweeping moves of Tiger Demon leaps over the ravine, Tiger Demon climbs the mountain, and Tiger Demon descends the mountain. The Tiger Demon Fist of Bone Forging also had 3 moves that were purely used to kill and injure. They were Tiger Demon Steals Heart, Tiger Demon Rips the Goat, and Tiger Demon Roars. It was several times more ferocious than the Ox Demon Fist of Great Strength. Little and come. The porcelain jar opened and Little and flew out. The blood color on his body had faded, leaving behind only a layer of red. He had basically returned to the appearance of a white skeleton. Li Qingshan clenched his fist. Blood dripped onto the white bones and instantly seeped in. This was the so-called blood of a living person. Such a cultivation method was evil and terrifying to the extreme. However, Li Qingshan didn't feel the slightest discomfort. It wasn't just because these 2 people wanted to harm him and there was nothing wrong with killing them. He smelled the thick stench of blood and a cruel delight surged from the bottom of his heart. The red light in the depths of his eyes also became more and more dazzling. In the eyes of mortals, oxen had always been relatively honest and docile creatures. Although they had their moments of violence, they couldn't compare to tigers that hunted for food. It was the same for the fist techniques named after these 2 beasts. If the Ox Demon Fist of Great Strength had only strengthened his bloodlust, then the Tiger Demon Fist of Bone Forging had completely stimulated the murderous nature in his heart. Those who were good at fighting liked to fight, and those who were good at killing liked to kill. This was the common sense of the world. Li Qingshan used his blood-stained hand to rub Little An's head and said gently, "Come out and get some fresh air." Although he didn't know how a skeleton could get some fresh air, Little An still happily climbed onto Li Qingshan's shoulder. Li Qingshan took off, but he didn't know that not long after he left, another 2 people rushed over. They were the long-faced man and the woman in blue from the tea house. The 2 of them were experienced in the Jianghu after all. They were not the scions of the Dragon's Gate sect. Even the woman in blue paled slightly when she saw the scene. The 3 Banes of Yao. To think that these 3 pieces of trash would dare set their sights on the spirit ginseng. Senior brother, he left the city to challenge the Dragon's Gate sect. This is a good opportunity for us. Once both sides are heavily injured, we'll be the Oriole behind them. We'll take the spirit ginseng and leave. Shut up. The long-faced man squatted down to examine the corpse. When he heard the woman in blue's plan, he cut her off with a livid expression. Let's go. We'll leave now. The further we go, the better. The woman in blue shouted, "What did you say?" Although the 3 Banes of Yao are not impressive figures, they do have some skills. Ignoring the fact that the 3 Banes are skilled in poison, the martial arts of the first and second Banes are pretty good. Even if they work together, I would have to put in a lot of effort. However, now that I'm on guard, I can't even withstand a single black tiger steals the heart before my heart was dug out. This Li Qingshan is not someone we can deal with. The rumors of the Black Wind stronghold might be true, the long-faced man said calmly, but his voice trembled slightly. The horse-faced man spoke calmly, but his voice was slightly trembling. He could imagine what would happen if he were to be incited to attack. We're using hidden weapons to launch sneak attacks. Are we supposed to fight him head-on? As long as we use our movement techniques to open up a distance, it will be fine. Senior brother, you're really too cowardly. Riches come from danger. If we obtain the spirit ginseng. The woman in blue chattered on. When she mentioned the spirit ginseng, her eyes lit up. "Pa." There was a clear slap. The woman in blue covered her face in disbelief. "You actually dared to hit me?" The long-faced man said, "If you want to die, go by yourself. Don't drag me along. Go back and tell Master. Let's see if Master will punish me or praise me." He swung his hand and left. The woman in blue was stunned for a while, but she still chased after him. "Senior brother, how can you do this?" The Dragon Gate Mountain was towering on the ground. The mountain was steep and precipitous. There were cliffs on 3 sides, especially on the east side. It was as if it had been chopped up by an axe. The cliff was several hundred feet high. It was straight up and down. Even monkeys would find it difficult to climb it. However, at this moment, the dark eastern cliff flickered with sparks of fire as it flew up quickly. Chapter 65. After killing the 3 evils of Yao, Li Qingshan rushed through the mountains and forests. There were no longer any obstructions. He crossed the rivers he came across and crossed the ridges he came across. His usage of the tiger demon's fist of bone forging became more and more ingenious. In less than 2 hours, he arrived at the cliff to the east of the Dragon's Gate. The mountain stabbed into his face like a sharp sword. He immediately thought about what to do as his body and mind sped up towards the cliff. 300 meters in the air, the wind whistled past his ears, but he ignored it. His eyes were as sharp as needles as he searched the cliff nervously, searching for a rock he could grab onto. Even if it was just an extremely small protrusion, he could use it as leverage. When he ran out of leverage, he would grab onto the cliff viciously. If the cliff was treated as flat ground, then Li Qingshan would be like a huge tiger with his back hunched and 4 limbs on the ground. However, he seemed like he was walking on flat ground, graceful and at ease. Only he knew that he was treading on thin ice, putting himself in danger. The slightest mistake would make him fall from several hundred meters in the air. Even with his body of steel, he would be smashed to pieces. It was no less dangerous than the Black Wind stronghold. However, he was fearless. Instead, his blood surged. The extreme danger had squeezed out all of the potential in his body. His spirit, willpower, and vigor had all reached unprecedented heights. He finally understood where the joy of those mountaineers who risked their lives to scale the highest peaks lay. He understood why there were people who liked extreme sports. To challenge difficulties and obstacles and achieve what others could not achieve had always been the nature and instincts of a hot-blooded man. He ignored the constant signals of exhaustion from his body, and he ignored the groans from his bones that could not hold on any longer. His body overloaded instead brought him the pleasure of releasing his soul, like flying. Suddenly, a valley appeared before him. He leapt as hard as he could, and only when he saw the buildings did he suddenly realize that this was not a valley, but a mountain peak. The world in his head flipped once again. He landed on the cliff on one knee and stood up to look back. The mountains were like beasts. The tiny Qingyang city was surrounded by these beasts as if it was in danger of being ripped to shreds at any time. This was not a world where people could live in peace. It was filled with unimaginable danger. During the decade or so he had spent in the Crouching Ox village, he had grumbled countless times. He missed the comfortable rooms of his past life, where he could eat various foods and spend an entire day in front of his computer. Even after the appearance of oxen, which could be described as great power, he still hesitated inside. He was comparing the 2 lives. Which one was better? Only tonight did he suddenly get the answer. He cut off the last shred of hesitation and opened his arms as if to embrace the world. This is the life I want. This is the adventurer's paradise. The biting cold wind made the young man's clothes flutter. On this cliff, he made an end to his past life, to the old dream that had haunted him for 15 years. I am Li Qingshan, the Li of Muzi, the Li of Li. Where in the world is there not a lush mountain? Little and crawled out of the jar as well. He stared at Li Qingshan blankly. Although he had no idea what he was thinking, he seemed to sense his will. He thought to himself, no matter where you want to go, I will accompany you until the end. Li Qingshan turned around resolutely and made his way towards the buildings and halls. That was where the Dragon's Gate sect stood. It was already quite late, but the soaring dragon hall of the Dragon's Gate sect was still brightly lit. The sect master, Yang Anji, sat in the seat of honor. Beside him was the pale-faced, resentful Yang Jun. The elders and core disciples of the sect stood to the two sides. They were all stern, and none of them said anything. Even the roaring flames could not warm their hearts. The Black Wind stronghold had been destroyed by Li Qingshan. This piece of news weighed on everyone's chests like a boulder. The Dragon's Gate sect was quite impressive. Li Qingshan had only returned to Qingyang City in the evening, but the news had already reached the Dragon's Gate sect in the evening. It was quite fast. Yang Jun roared out with a twisted face, "That's impossible. It must be a rumor. It's only been a day. It's not like the Black Wind stronghold is made of paper. How could they be destroyed?" Jun, stop talking. It's the army of Qingyang City, and there's Lu Hong and Huang Binggu working together too. It's no surprise that the Black Wind stronghold has been destroyed. I just never thought it would be so fast. Yang Anji truly lived up to his reputation as the sect master of a sect. He was still able to maintain some composure after hearing about such a great event. An elder said, "I never thought Lu Hong and Huang Binggu would work together to help that kid." "Senior brother, what do we do now? Many aristocrats have summoned their descendants back." "What do you mean help that kid?" "It's just for the treasures of the Black Wind stronghold. They won't spare the Dragon's Gate sect. This is basically an unprecedented disaster for our Dragon's Gate sect." The Dragon's Gate sect had been established for many years now. Although it had never been a large sect of the Jianghu, it did possess a very deep foundation in Qingyang. Martial arts and influence combined to form an absolute ruling force. Right now, they were like a local tyrant who had been living comfortably, suddenly hearing that the entire world was revolting. They basically felt like the end of the world had arrived. "Senior brother, I've said long ago that we need to restrain our disciples from running amok. If they run amok like this, they'll provoke powerful enemies sooner or later and bring great trouble to our Dragon's Gate sect." Although the disciplinary elder said this to Yang Anji, he was looking at Yang Jun. The others all showed resentment too. "Old bastard, what nonsense are you spouting? Your idiotic son has someone else's wife and daughter come looking for them. Who stood up for them?" Yang Jun was furious. Normally, he would never speak to his seniors like that, but he had suddenly lost his martial arts. Even the Dragon's Gate sect that protected him might not be able to protect him anymore. He had lost his mind, so he no longer cared. "You!" The disciplinary elder's face reddened. "All of you, shut up." Yang Anji's voice boomed through the hall. His inner force could not be underestimated. Is now the time for internal strife? No matter what happened in the past, the priority right now is to deal with the crisis before us. I've already sent disciples to guard the mountain path and pass on the news with torches. If someone attacks the mountain en masse, they definitely won't be able to hide from us. If we really can't stop them, we can only retreat through the secret passageway in the ancestral hall with our savings. We'll abandon the Dragon's Gate mountain and preserve our strength. At the end of the day, the Dragon's Gate sect was a sect that had existed for several generations. Apart from the young masters of aristocrats, there were still many loyal disciples who served them. However, these disciples never imagined that their sect master had already made plans to abandon them. Abandon the Dragon's Gate mountain. Everyone in the hall was shocked. They had thought of the worst-case scenario, but when they suddenly heard it, they still struggled to accept it. I'm only talking about the worst-case scenario, and it's only a temporary plan. I've already sent letters to all the members of the Martial Arts Society, both orthodox and evil. Everyone has already learned about the news of the spiritual ginseng. Before long, Qingyang City will be filled with people of the Jianghu. Not only will the kid be dead, but even Lu Hong and Huang Binggu might die a violent death. As long as we preserve our strength, we'll be able to make a comeback before long. Chapter 66. Yang Anji's expression changed drastically. He had not sensed Li Qingshan's arrival at all. Li Qingshan raised his leg and strode forward. He no longer seemed clumsy. Instead, he was as light and silent as a feline. The other elders and disciples were still wondering who he was. Yang Jun roared, "Li Qingshan." Everyone in the hall stood up at the same time, pressing down on their swords. There was a flurry of discussion. What are the disciples guarding the mountain doing? How did you get up here? Who else? Get out here. You don't have to worry about how I got up here. I'm the only one here today. Li Qingshan looked around and saw that there were many people he did not know. He said, "I'm only here today to kill the culprit. The rest of you can leave the hall. I'll give you 10 minutes. He turned to the side, making way for the door behind him. However, what he received in response was the sound of swords being drawn. Eerie sword light flickered. The disciplinary hall elder said, "There's a path to heaven, but you chose to barge in instead. To think that you dared to sneak up the mountain alone. Do you really think that our Dragon's Gate sect is a pushover?" He was in charge of punishment and was known for his callousness in the Dragon's Gate sect. He looked at Li Qingshan like he was looking at the disciples who had offended him. Kill him. He's our Dragon's Gate sect's greatest enemy. If not for him, the Dragon's Gate sect wouldn't be where it is today. How dare he send himself to our doorstep? We can't let him off so easily. I want to chop off all his limbs. Originally, everyone had almost fallen out with each other, but due to the appearance of the culprit, Li Qingshan, they banded together. They wanted to unleash all of their fury on him. They were tempted to cut him to pieces and cut him to pieces. To them, Li Qingshan, who had come alone, was already a piece of meat on the chopping block, ready for them to do as they pleased. Only Yang Anji remained silent. He gripped his sword hilt tightly, sensing the changes in Li Qingshan. Originally, Li Qingshan was like an iron rod. Although it was powerful and heavy, it lacked variation and sharpness. As for the current Li Qingshan, he seemed to have been sharpened and revealed his ability, causing others to raise their eyebrows. Li Qingshan said with a calm expression, "Then, the Dragon's Gate sect will be the next Black Wind stronghold." Killing intent surged in his heart, and his entire body surged with killing chi, pressing towards the people of the Dragon's Gate sect. Such a heavy, murderous aura. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts, feeling as if the temperature in the hall had suddenly dropped by a few degrees. Yang Jun, who had been crippled of his martial arts, almost collapsed to the ground. Li Qingshan took advantage of this opportunity and used the tiger demon leaping over the ravine to pounce on the Dragon's Gate disciple closest to him. There was a distance of more than 10 steps between them, and Li Qingshan closed the distance in an instant. He used the tiger demon digs out the heart to swipe at Li Qingshan, and the sound of his 5 fingers tearing through the air was terrifying. Even a lion would use its full strength when hunting a rabbit. It would never rely on its advantage to waste words with its enemy. That disciple had not expected Li Qingshan to suddenly attack. In his shock and fear, he could not even use half of his strength. He could only watch as Li Qingshan's hand reached into his chest and dug out a bloody heart before casually tossing it aside. Shaoan leapt up and caught the heart in his hand, absorbing the heart's blood. Ever since he learned from Li Qingshan that there was a chance for him to recover his body of flesh and blood, he had done this with the attitude of completing a sacred ceremony. 2 balls of fire flashed in little An's eye sockets as he swept his gaze across the people in the hall. As long as he killed this group of people, he would be 1 step closer to his goal. No matter the price, he wanted to appear before Shaoqin with a physical body again. Everyone from the Dragon's Gate sect had reacted when Li Qingshan killed that disciple. However, they came to an abrupt halt as they looked at this strange scene in horror. Beside the flickering candlelight, a skeleton was holding a human heart and devouring it. Only 2 words appeared in their minds. Demon. Since Little and no longer possessed the ability to conceal himself, there was no need for him to do so. Li Qingshan drew the ancestral sword of the Dragon's Gate sect, the soaring dragon sword, and stabbed it into the ground. I've long heard that the Dragon's Gate sect is famous for its sword arts. Little and come and have a spar. Little and tossed the heart aside and grabbed the soaring dragon sword. The sword was a little too big for him, but the moment he grasped the hilt, his aura changed. He was like a peerless swordsman. The tip of the sword pointed diagonally, and every single person from the Dragon's Gate sect felt like they were enveloped by the sword's aura. The disciplined hall elder's face was pale. He no longer had the confidence he had just now. As a member of a sword sect, no matter what kind of person they were, they still knew their stuff when it came to sword techniques. The person who had left behind the sword aura and sword intent on the scroll was someone who could draw a spirit artifact and was praised by Oxen. Even though little and had only comprehended a portion of the sword technique from it, it surpassed all the sword techniques of a second-rate sect like the Dragon's Gate sect. The marble tiles beneath Li Qingshan's feet shattered, and he vanished from where he stood. He used the tiger demon leaping over the ravine again, ignoring everyone else in the hall and going straight for the sect master of the Dragon's Gate sect, Yang Anji. Yang Anji shouted, "Kill him!" His voice jolted everyone in the hall back to their senses. They were swordsmen who had practiced the sword for many years, so they would not be truly intimidated. They knew that this was a moment of life and death. Their eyes reddened, and they used their full strength. Over a dozen streaks of sword chi pierced towards Li Qingshan, who was in midair and had nowhere to go. Li Qingshan did not dodge or dodge. He did not even glance at the sword flashes. His pupils narrowed to the size of needles as he stared at Yang Anji like a ruthless wild beast. Yang Anji's sword was finally unsheathed. It was another treasured sword that flashed with spiritual light. Although it was slightly inferior to the soaring dragon sword, it still had the ability to cut through metal and jade. It manifested 7 layers of sword silhouettes, creating 7 sword flowers that attacked Li Qingshan. Even if the other swords could not pierce through Li Qingshan's skin, this sword would definitely take Li Qingshan's life. Just as Li Qingshan was about to make a move, Little and suddenly rushed out from below. The soaring dragon sword also manifested 7 layers of sword silhouettes, creating 7 sword flowers that clashed with Yang Anji's sword, producing a series of sharp clangs. Behind Little and the group of Dragon's Gate elders and disciples froze like statues, maintaining the posture of stabbing at Li Qingshan. Horrifying wounds appeared on their necks, chests, and foreheads. Blood spurted out of their mouths at practically the same time as they fell to the ground. The instant Li Qingshan made his move, Little and held the soaring dragon sword and attacked at the same time. However, he stayed close to the ground as he passed through the hall. While everyone was attacking Li Qingshan with all their might, he instantly killed all the elders and disciples. Then, he faced Yang Anji's sword. He was not a child, but a demonic cultivator who cultivated demonic arts. The soaring dragon sword was not a toy either, but a terrifying weapon that could take someone's life. When Little and first mastered the path of white bone and great beauty, Li Qingshan had once said that he could probably flatten the Black Wind stronghold alone. Now that he had comprehended the sword techniques of a spiritual artifact and used a weapon like the soaring dragon sword, Little and had finally seen just how powerful he was. This kid. Their martial prowess had gradually surpassed the realm of second-rate experts. This was the Jianghu. Under the suppression of absolute martial prowess, numbers were basically useless. Chapter 67. Yang Anji saw the hall littered with corpses. The Dragon's Gate sect's legacy had ended in his hands in the blink of an eye. This was because Li Qingshan had been a weakling in his eyes back then. Dealing with weaklings was not called provoking, but taking advantage of. However, today, Yang Anji had become the one being taken advantage of. After exchanging blows with Little and Yang Anji managed to escape from death just in time to avoid Li Qingshan's full-powered pounce. Otherwise, if Li Qingshan used his moves, he would be confident of seeing the color of Yang Anji's heart. As for Little and, he had instantly killed 10 people and knocked away Yang Anji's sword. He was also at the end of his tether, unable to catch up immediately. "Father, save me." Yang Jun looked at the 2 monsters within reach. He no longer had any arrogance. He extended his hand to Yang Anji, pleading for help with a face filled with fear. However, Yang Anji had no intention of stopping. He rushed to the back of the hall like a wisp of smoke. He could have more sons, but he only had 1 life. He was truly a hero who cut his losses, extremely vicious. Yang Jun instantly despaired. He closed his eyes and felt a strong wind blow at him, but he did not feel any pain. When he opened his eyes, he saw that Li Qingshan and Little and did not even look at him, rushing past him and chasing after Yang Anji. Yang Anji's movement techniques were impressive. Once he got far away, it would be difficult to catch up. Yang Jun rarely took off his clothes. He ignored his sweat-drenched heavy clothes and immediately moved his feet, rushing out of the hall. He kept repeating in his heart, "I must take revenge. I must take revenge." Pfft. A bone hand stabbed into his back, piercing through him. Yang Jun looked at his chest in disbelief. He took a few steps forward and fell to the ground with a thud. When Little and saw that Yang Jun wanted to escape, he swung his left arm, and his bone arm flew out like a hidden weapon, killing him. As if it was being pulled by an invisible force, the skeletal arm flew to the back of the palace. Behind the main hall was the Dragon's Gate sect's ancestral hall. It enshrined the portraits of the past sect masters of the Dragon's Gate sect. The first sect master's portrait was the largest, close to 3 meters tall. It depicted a swordsman as tall as a grown man, wielding the soaring dragon sword as he looked down on the entire ancestral hall with an indifferent expression. It was rumored that when he arrived in Qingyang, he saw bandits running amok and slaughtering the innocent, so he killed his way into the den of bandits alone and slaughtered them all. He became known as the Soaring Dragon Swordsman, which was similar to Li Qingshan's rise to fame. The commoners and gentry of Qingyang were all filled with gratitude. They asked him to stay behind, so he established a sect on the Dragon's Gate Mountain and passed down martial arts, establishing the Dragon's Gate sect. However, he probably never imagined that this would happen today. No, perhaps he did. The secret passageway of the Dragon's Gate sect was built behind the offering table beneath his portrait. As long as he entered it, he would be able to pass through the center of the mountain and escape with his life from an unknown exit. This was where Yang Anji's objective lay. Yang Anji's confidence in his movement technique was crushed by the wind that constantly drew closer from behind. He only needed an instant, and he would end up like the elders and disciples in the hall. Perhaps he had lost his mind due to fear, but he actually cried out, "Save me, founding ancestor." Li Qingshan immediately pulled back the hand that he had extended towards Yang Anji's back. He was worried that Yang Anji would be like Xiong Xianwu, possessing trump cards that surpassed regular cultivators. With his current experience, items that belonged to the category of spiritual artifacts or techniques were not rare in this world. These techniques could be very weak, but they could also be very powerful, making it impossible for him to accurately predict them. Indeed, before Yang Anji finished speaking, a small sword on the offering table suddenly shone brightly and flew towards Li Qingshan. Although the small sword shone with golden light, it was clearly a wooden sword that had been painted gold. At this moment, it exploded with astonishing sword light, illuminating the pitch-black ancestral hall as it turned into a golden rainbow. The sword was still dozens of feet away, but Li Qingshan already felt a stabbing pain in his forehead. Furthermore, he had a feeling that no matter how he dodged, he would definitely not be able to avoid the sword's attack. Yang Anji relaxed slightly. This was a secret that only the previous Dragon's Gate sect leader knew. When their founding ancestor passed away, he did not leave behind a corpse, but only this small sword. It was very similar to the Taoist's Bingjia. He had instructed his first disciple, who was Yang Anji's ancestor, to worship and pray to this small sword every day. He could not slack off. Once a strong enemy invaded, he could call for help, and they would definitely be able to avert danger. However, it could only be used once. Although Yang Anji had also followed and prayed for decades, he did not believe this rumor at first. He had also examined the small sword, and it was only an extremely ordinary wooden sword. Any iron sword would be able to split it in half. However, he did not dare to not believe it. He had also considered how to use it, but he thought that once the Iron Fist and the Drawn Reins village joined forces with the county magistrate's troops, they would definitely attack the mountain on a large scale. With thousands of people attacking, a sword that could only be used once would not have any decisive effect. It was not until this moment of life and death that he finally gave it a try, disregarding everything else, that he actually succeeded. Li Qingshan also knew that he could not take it head-on. His body flipped in the air, but the small sword seemed to have a mind of its own. It twisted in the air and let out a shrill whistle as it tore through the air. With a whoosh, it pounced towards Li Qingshan like lightning. Li Qingshan felt that the spot between his brows was becoming more and more powerful, and cold air assaulted his face. Suddenly, he thrust his sword horizontally, piercing the body of the small sword. Little and tried to help Li Qingshan out of the predicament, but not only did his sword that could pierce through metal and stone fail to break the small wooden sword, he instead felt a huge force pass through the body of the sword. The flying dragon sword that could cut through iron like mud shattered into countless pieces, shooting in all directions. Little and was also sent flying, crashing into a pillar. However, the small sword only dimmed slightly. After a pause, it continued piercing towards Li Qingshan. It would not rest until it took his life. Li Qingshan had already retreated to a corner of the hall. Using the opportunity Little and had bought for him, he unfurled the cursive sword calligraphy and poured in his quintessence without caring about anything else. At this critical moment, a slash lit up and a sword light soared up and shot out, clashing with the small sword that shone with golden light. There was no sound that could be considered loud. Only a ring of spiritual light spread out in the hall, like a small sun that suddenly rose up. However, Li Qingshan felt like thunder rumbled in his ears. His ears buzzed, and a trickle of blood flowed out. The light dissipated very quickly, and the portraits of the Dragon's Gate sect master turned into powder and scattered. It was the same for Li Qingshan's clothes. On closer inspection, there were thousands of sword marks that were as thin as a cow's hair on the walls and floor. The shattered small sword released thousands of sword chi that were as fine as light, silently piercing through everything in the hall. Even Li Qingshan could not help but be dumbfounded by such might. The might of the flying sword left a deep impression in his mind. Yang Anji had been guarding the entrance to the secret passageway in the first place. When he saw that his assassination attempt had failed, he immediately turned around and entered the secret passageway. As long as he entered the secret passageway, he could activate the mechanism and place down a huge boulder to seal the entrance. No one would be able to catch up to him then. Chapter 68. The moment Yang Anji took a step forward, he collapsed to the ground as if he had been electrocuted. His entire body trembled as blood seeped out from every pore on his body. Before long, he had turned into a bloody gourd. The sharp sword chi did not distinguish friend from foe. Li Qingshan had only managed to avoid injury because of his true chi, but Yang Anji only cultivated inner force, which was qualitatively different from true chi. It was not enough to block the sword chi. The entire ancestral hall began to creak. Dust and wood scattered down. The sword chi had destroyed the entire structure, and it looked like it was about to collapse. With the earth and wood weighing down, Li Qingshan did not dare to be careless. Little and run. However, he charged straight for Yang Anji. The sound of the ancestral hall collapsing echoed for over 5 kilometers. Dust spread through the entire Dragon's Gate mountain, immediately alarming the disciples guarding the mountain. They all rushed up the mountain. In the main hall up ahead, the dust dissipated, and Li Qingshan's figure appeared. He held a heart in his hand. Little and lowered his head in guilt. If he had not forced himself to exchange blows with Yang Anji, he would not have had the chance to escape to the ancestral hall. Li Qingshan would not have had to take such a huge risk. Li Qingshan rubbed Little N's head. It's fine. He was like a father doting on his child, or an older brother doting on his younger brother. Cruelty and gentleness, two completely opposite temperaments, appeared on him at the same time. It was extremely contradictory yet logical. Using the tiger digging out the heart technique, he took the hearts of over a dozen Dragon's Gate sect experts. After Little and absorbed them, the flames in his eye sockets became much brighter. Both his strength and speed had increased significantly. The speed of his improvement was indeed worthy of its name. Li Qingshan took down the spiritual artifact sword that was slightly inferior to the soaring dragon sword from the beam. However, it was much smaller and more suitable for Little and to wield, allowing him to unleash the might of his sword technique. Li Qingshan searched through Dragon's Gate sect again and found a set of clothes to wear. However, he did not find a treasure trove like the one in Black Wind Stronghold. After all, the Dragon's Gate sect would not have bought so many gold and silver utensils for no reason. The Black Wind bandits were bandits themselves, so it was inconvenient for them to sell their loot. That was why they stored them in the treasure vault. However, he managed to find more than 10 bottles of medicine. They were labeled with the names 9 Ginseng Dew Pill, Dear Fetus Bone-Changing Pill, and so on. Although they were not divine pills or miraculous medicines, the Dragon's Gate sect had spent a great deal of effort to refine them for the sake of nurturing their disciples. Although their effects could not compare to the spiritual ginseng spirit wine, they were far superior to the wine brewed from ordinary ginseng. As for his greatest gain, he found a stack of banknotes on the body of the Dragon's Gate's young master, Yang Jun. There were several tens of thousands of silver taels. Yang Anji had already made preparations to retreat. He had taken out all his savings and entrusted them to his only son for safekeeping in case of emergency. However, he did not expect that Li Qingshan would come so quickly and so fiercely. The disciples guarding the Dragon's Gate sect all rushed over. When they saw the collapse of the ancestral hall, they exchanged looks, dumbfounded. What's going on? When they rushed into the hall, they were immediately stunned by the horrifying scene before them. Corpses were strewn all over the place, each with a hole in their chest. Only one figure stood there with his back to them. A disciple mustered up his courage and shouted, "Who are you?" Li Qingshan patted the porcelain jar, placating the rather restless Little N. Then he turned around and said, "I am Li Qingshan. The Dragon's Gate sect has been destroyed. You can all disperse." With that, he strode out of the hall. The Black Wind bandits were filled with crimes, so he had to kill them all. As for the people from the Dragon's Gate sect in the hall, they had already become sworn enemies with him. They wanted his life, so he could not spare them. However, these ordinary disciples of the Dragon's Gate sect were only used as sacrificial pawns. Even if he wanted to help Little and recover as soon as possible, he did not want to kill indiscriminately. Of course, if these disciples dared to draw their swords at him, he would not show any mercy. Those who used swords died by the sword, and those who killed should be prepared to be killed as well. Li Qingshan passed through the dozens of Dragon's Gate sect disciples, and they all opened up a path for him in unison. Just as Li Qingshan was about to reach the doors of the hall, someone drew his sword and roared, "I'll kill you." Then he charged at Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan looked back at him indifferently, and the disciple froze. The murderous gaze was like a sharp sword, piercing into his heart. The sword in his hand fell to the ground with a clang, and he fell to his knees, saying, "You are not human. You are a demon." A demon? Naturally, Li Qingshan did not take it to heart. He walked out of the hall at ease and took a deep breath. Another grudge had been settled. On the lone peak, the group of Dragon's Gate disciples followed behind Li Qingshan as they trembled. Li Qingshan arrived at the edge of the cliff and leapt off, vanishing into the snowy darkness. As the saying went, it was easier to go up the mountain than down. Compared to climbing up the mountain, Li Qingshan's path down the mountain was even more dangerous. He used the tiger demon to descend the mountain and controlled his body with everything he had. He had to use every bit of power carefully. If he used a bit more or a bit less, he would end up smashed to pieces. However, with the experience from last time, he still managed to descend the mountain safely. He became more and more familiar with the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. Just as Li Qingshan was in high spirits, his stomach growled loudly. He felt an intense wave of hunger. He had not been as hungry as he was right now, even after such a long battle during the long-range raid on the Black Wind Stronghold last night. He sprinted along the way and returned to Qingyang City, only to see that the city gates were already closed. With a leap and a climb, he made his way over and returned to the restaurant. The restaurant was ablaze with lanterns. The banquet had yet to disperse. Everyone tasted their alcohol without much interest and chatted idly, waiting for Li Qingshan's news. Li Qingshan suddenly appeared before everyone. Everyone wondered whether he had not arrived at the Dragon's Gate sect at all, as his round trip had taken less than 2 hours. It was not even enough for regular people to climb up the Dragon's Gate mountain. However, although Li Qingshan used snow to wash away the bloodstains on him, the smell of blood was so heavy that it refused to disperse. Yi Dachuan said, "Qingshan." Li Qingshan said, "Please remain calm, sir. The Dragon's Gate sect has already been destroyed. Yang Anji, Yang Jun, and the bandits have all been wiped out. I've sent the other disciples to disperse on their own." Everyone in the restaurant gasped at the same time. If it were not for their fear of Li Qingshan's might, they basically would have doubted whether he was telling the truth or not. Just what kind of speed was that? He had gone to destroy the Black Wind stronghold, and the round trip had taken him an entire day and night. Yi Dachuan said, "So fast." Li Qingshan nodded. Although it had only been a day, he had already become stronger. First of all, Little and had practiced the path of white bone and great beauty, becoming a powerful ally. Then, he had practiced the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging, converting his strength into destructive power. Chapter 69. Originally, when Lu Hong lost to Li Qingshan, he was still rather reluctant to accept it. He felt like Li Qingshan was bullying him for not using a weapon. He also knew how to use the blade. Only when Li Qingshan destroyed the Black Wind stronghold alone did he truly accept it. However, he only treated Li Qingshan as someone with extraordinary talent, someone who surpassed him. After all, Li Qingshan had the assistance of other masters. But now, he had a feeling that as long as Li Qingshan wanted to, he could take his life in a single strike. Let alone counterattacking, he did not even have the opportunity to flee. This was the intuition of an experienced member of the Jianghu. It had helped him avoid danger many times before, so it definitely would not be wrong. Had he already become a first-rate master? That was impossible. It had only been a day. However, the reality before him did not allow him to refute it. He deeply doubted whether reporting the matter of the spiritual ginseng to the headquarters of the Clear River Prefecture in Iron Fist was right or wrong. The leader of the main branch would definitely send people over. Everyone knew the value of the spiritual ginseng. However, even if he did not do that, the Clear River Prefecture would receive the news very soon under Yang Anji's intentional actions. This place would become a gathering place for people of the Jianghu very soon. Li Long also attended the celebratory banquet. As he looked at the high-spirited young man who had emerged from the Crouching Ox village with him, revered by the aristocrats, he was unable to describe whether he felt admiration or envy. His feelings were also a complete mess. However, he sharply noticed the change in Lu Hong's expression. He asked, "Master, are you all right?" Li Qingshan also heard that. He toasted him. "Old hero Lu. Just now, I've left in too much of a hurry, so I've disturbed the mood. Take this cup of wine as an apology." Lu Hong stood up in a hurry. "Sigh, Qingshan, you're making me look down on you by calling me that." "What hero?" "Only old hero is true. The Jianghu belongs to you young people. Xiao Long, get up. You're from the same hometown, so you should drink a few more cups. I'll have to trouble you to take care of my disciple in the future, Jishan." Everyone was confused. The Iron Fist possessed influence across the entire Clear River Prefecture. They were truly a great organization, yet they needed an outsider to look after their disciple. Li Qingshan stared blankly for a moment, then smiled and said, "Well said." He drained the wine in one gulp. It was obviously an extremely ordinary thing, yet it caused everyone to cheer loudly. Li Qingshan responded slightly, and his stomach began to rumble again. Many people smiled, but quickly hid their smiles. Yi Dachuan said, "Quickly make something to eat. Go, get the kitchen to send more dishes over." The more he looked at Li Qingshan, the more he liked him. As long as this Sheriff Li was present, he could easily subdue both the legal and illegal forces of Qingyang City, allowing him to truly live up to his name as the district magistrate. On the other hand, Li Qingshan was powerful and bold, but he also knew etiquette and propriety. He wasn't a frivolous youth who considered everyone beneath him. Sometimes, he was so experienced that he didn't seem like a youth at all. Li Qingshan had no idea what Yi Dachuan was thinking. Right now, all he had in his eyes was the table full of dishes. He really did consider everyone beneath him. In the beginning, he maintained a basic demeanor, but after a few mouthfuls of food, he could no longer care about that. He just opened his mouth wide and ate heartily, truly wolfing down the food. With a swipe of his chopsticks, an entire plate of food would be emptied. This was only because he used his strength skillfully. Regular people would not be able to achieve that. At the same time, he ate extremely meticulously. No matter what food entered his mouth, he would crush it with a single bite and grind it. He was even more efficient than other people chewing slowly. He took a small bite of a roast chicken, and he did not even spit out the bones. He also ground it up and swallowed it. In just a few bites, the roast chicken had been devoured cleanly. Everyone was dumbfounded. They had never seen someone eat like this before. Before long, Li Qingshan had eaten half of the table full of dishes, but he still did not feel full at all. His stomach was like a great furnace that could never be filled, digesting and absorbing the food at an extremely fast rate, converting it into energy and delivering it to various parts of his body. Cheers even gradually rang out in the restaurant. Young hero Li sure is gallant. What young hero? It's a sheriff. With a gallant like Sheriff Li protecting us, why would we need to fear bandits? Even Li Qingshan himself found it rather strange that a group of people cheered as he ate alone. He knew that his table manners definitely could not be described as pretty. To these aristocrats who lived like princes and cared about their appearance, he could definitely be labeled as a country bumpkin or a starving ghost. However, most of the praise was sincere. If regular people ate like this, they would have been drowned out by the disdainful gazes a long time ago. However, Li Qingshan was no regular person. He was an expert who had flattened 2 organizations in Qingyang. Everyone's evaluation of him immediately took a 180-degree turn, becoming bold and domineering. Li Qingshan ate and drank heartily. The dishes and alcohol were served up like flowing water. Only after eating 3 tables of dishes did he stop. It was getting late, so everyone dispersed. Naturally, someone had arranged a residence for him. It was quite a large courtyard in Qingyang City. Who knew how many cups of alcohol he had drunk? With his body's capacity for alcohol, he became rather drunk. As soon as he returned to his room, he collapsed on the bed and murmured, "Little," and he felt extremely at ease. If it were not for Little, and he would have never been bold enough to get so drunk and sleep. He would have to be on high alert at all times. This was the terrifying aspect of being targeted by everyone. If this continued for a long time, no matter how great your martial arts were, your mind would become exhausted and frail. It would be even more impossible for you to be in the mood to practice your abilities and martial arts. Little and carefully removed his shoes and clothes, placing him on the bed and covering him with a blanket. It was like he was completing a sacred ceremony. Afterwards, he pressed down on his sword and stood by the bed like a guard. Perhaps it was because Li Qingshan's actions last night had frightened away many people, or perhaps it was because the gazes in the darkness still wanted to continue watching, but Li Qingshan spent the night peacefully. No insensible person came to disturb him. He slept until the sky brightened. Only then did the mental exhaustion from the continuous battles and slaughter truly ease up. He blanked out on the bed for a while, thinking back to the dream he had last night. It was no longer a dream of his past life, but a new dream. However, what was it exactly? He could not remember anything at all. As he blanked out, Little and placed a basin of water before him. Li Qingshan thanked him and lowered his head to look at the basin. Why do I seem to have gotten thinner? He touched his face. He really did seem to have gotten thinner. He ate meat every day in the mountains, so after achieving the strength of an ox, his body had clearly become sturdier. His face had fleshed out too, no longer as skinny as before. He seemed extremely energetic, as sturdy as an ox. Was it because he had worked too hard over the past 2 days? He muttered in his heart and plunged his head into the water. When he pulled it out again, he was completely awake. Let's go. It's time to practice. The location of the courtyard was a little remote, very quiet and spacious. It was suitable for practicing martial arts, which suited Li Qingshan's taste very well. When he walked out of the door, he realized that the snow had stopped. The winter sun shone on the snowy ground, dazzling brightly. Li Qingshan walked through the snow to the sunlight and stretched. He turned around and saw that little and was still standing in the shadow, not daring to step out of the door. Chapter 70. Little and looked at Li Qingshan. Under the sunlight and snow, he seemed to be covered in a halo. His smile was so brilliant that no one dared to look him in the eye. It was practically glorious. That hand seemed to be an invitation from the world of light. The pain of being burned by the sun was still etched in his heart, but he could not stop himself from reaching out his hand. The hand that had no flesh, only white bones, was like a moth attracted to a flame. Even if he was burned by the sun at this moment, he could not refuse the invitation from that hand. His index finger crossed the boundary between light and darkness first. The sunlight did not burn him. Instead, an extremely warm feeling ignited from the depths of the spirit ginseng. He almost could not wait any longer as he placed his hand in Li Qingshan's. Li Qingshan clenched the pale, skeletal hand that might have been rather terrifying to a normal person. Little and stepped out of the room and crossed the boundary between light and darkness, bathing himself in the sunlight. Li Qingshan laughed loudly as he lifted Little and up. "How do you feel?" Little and nodded happily, expressing that he felt great. He had never felt so good before. Sunlight was not only harmful to ghosts, but it could also suppress all evil in the world. Oxen was not fooling Li Qingshan. Little and was not afraid of sunlight, not because he was powerful enough, but because he could not be categorized as an evil demon. He even possessed the solemn and holy aura of Buddhism. This was the power of the path of white bone and great beauty, a demonic ability created by an eminent monk of Buddhism. Life and death were difficult to distinguish, and Buddhism and the demonic were one and the same. On such a joyous day, even Li Qingshan could not think of any good ideas to celebrate for Little and could neither eat nor drink. Was he supposed to rush out and dig out 2 hearts? As a result, he waved his hand. "I'll make you a snowman." As expected, Little and was as happy as a normal child. Li Qingshan said, "I didn't tell you, did I? My skill in making snowmen is even better than my divine power." Little and immediately showed a look of admiration. Li Qingshan was very satisfied and laughed. He squatted down and rolled the thick snow into a big ball. Then he rolled another small ball and placed it on top of the big ball. He looked at it and was very satisfied with the perfect shape of the 2 snowballs. He was about to go back to the house to find something to make a nose and eyes. Suddenly, he saw a white figure standing in front of him. He took a closer look and realized that the white figure was actually himself. A snow sculpture of Li Qingshan. Although his facial features were a little blurry, his figure and his aura were simply lifelike. Little and was patiently sculpting the curves of his clothes. Li Qingshan said, This was done by you." This was no longer a snowman, but a snow sculpture. Little and nodded and looked curiously behind Li Qingshan. "Huh." Li Qingshan opened his mouth and exhaled. He turned around and kicked the 2 perfect snowballs into pieces. Little and was shocked. "Haha, this is just practice. Now I'm going to be serious." Little and completed the snow sculptures of the big Li Qingshan, the middle Li Qingshan, the little Li Qingshan, and all kinds of birds and beasts. "Huh, huh, huh." Li Qingshan destroyed his masterpieces, one by one, collapsing on the snow in exhaustion. "All right then. My ability to make snowmen is still a little lacking compared to my innate ability. But seeing how Shaoan was having so much fun, it could be said that he had achieved his goal. Someone is coming." Li Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. Hearing the footsteps, Little and immediately hid in the house. Dong, dong, dong. After a few knocks on the door, Li Qingshan opened the door. It was the advisor. The advisor smiled. "Arresterly, how did you sleep last night? My lord wants to invite you to the yamen. There will be a court hearing today." Li Qingshan told Little and to hide well and went to the yamen. Yi Dachuan personally invited him to the back hall and ordered someone to take out a set of clothes. It was the arrester's uniform and a standard wind-entwining saber. Li Qingshan couldn't refuse the kindness of others. Moreover, the identity of arrestor was also useful to Li Qingshan. Although the government in this world didn't seem powerful, there must be something special about it since it could occupy the world's orthodox position. He needed this title for the time being. Li Qingshan went to a side room to change his clothes and equipped the wind-entwining saber. When he emerged again, his bearing had changed once more. The black arrester's uniform was not as ugly as Li Qingshan had imagined it to be. Instead, it was very much like a uniform. When he wore it, he lost some of the unrestrained bearing of the people of the Jianghu, but gained some solemnity and heroism. Yi Dachuan said, "I originally thought it was a little too small, but I didn't think it would be just right. Although it can't compare to the proper Black Wolf uniform, you really do look more impressive than the proper Hawk Wolf guards when you wear it." Li Qingshan thought that it really wasn't his imagination. He really had become thinner. It was not because he had exercised too much in the past few days. It was probably the effects of practicing the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging. The Black Wolf uniform? The Hawk Wolf guard. Yi Dachuan said, they're just a bunch of condescending, ruthless wolf cubs. Don't worry, they can't control this place. In Qingyang City, you and I are the ones in charge. Originally, Li Qingshan had only asked casually, but he instead paid attention to it now. Yi Dachuan seemed to be implying that if the Hawk Wolf Guard managed to control this place, they would no longer be the ones in charge. However, Yi Dachuan had witnessed his martial prowess before. As it seemed, the imperial court and government of this world were not as weak as he had imagined them to be. The weak ones were probably just Sir Yi before him. He had been shut up in the mountain village for over a decade, going on expeditions as soon as he emerged. He did not have the time to properly understand this world. Even now, it was the same. He needed to practice the Tiger Demon's fist of bone forging as soon as possible so that he could deal with the changes and dangers that might come next. "Sir Yi, Arrestor Li, it's time for you to enter the court," said the advisor. Li Qingshan stood there and struck a pose before bidding farewell. When he returned to the courtyard, he discovered that the door was open. His heart leapt, and he rushed through the door, only to see Huang Binga studying the snow eagles in the courtyard. "Qingshan, you sure in good spirits." Li Qingshan smiled bitterly. He could not argue back. "Hunting chief, you've come so quickly. Don't tell me these are." There were 8 large jars of alcohol and 2 bamboo baskets in the courtyard. They were extremely eye-catching. Obviously the tiger bone alcohol you wanted. Huang Bingu opened a jar of alcohol, and the heavy fragrance of medicinal alcohol permeated the entire courtyard. "So many. I've taken out everything I've got." Huang Bingu studied Li Qingshan with a smile. "You sure handsome in your attire. If you really join the Hawk Wolf Guard, you won't have to worry about others trying to steal your things." "The Hawk Wolf Guard again?" Li Qingshan said, "Hunting chief, is the Hawk Wolf Guard really that powerful?" Huang Bingu had left Qingyang City in the past and visited a place as large as the Clear River Prefecture, so Li Qingshan obviously wanted to ask for his guidance. Chapter 71. Li Qingshan pondered. Perhaps this was the true strength of the imperial court, but that only made sense. There was no such thing as the weak ruling over the strong in this world. Anyone who possessed power would want to pursue greater authority. How could ordinary people rule over people of the Jianghu with great martial arts? The Hawk Wolf Guard must have been an important force of the imperial court. It was said that the 6 doors of fans was easy to cultivate in. If he could join them, it would save him quite a lot of trouble. There's still a chance. "I believe you can do it." Huang Binga thought he was considering the matter of joining the Hawk Wolf Guard. He had already learned that Li Qingshan had destroyed the Dragon's Gate sect in 2 hours last night, but unlike others, when he heard the news, apart from shock, he also felt like, just as I thought. Ever since he met Li Qingshan had grown at an unbelievable rate. He could not help but think of what Li Qingshan had said in the past, "I will definitely become an innate master." Originally, he treated it as a child's words, but now he believed it. As long as Li Qingshan did not die along the way, he would definitely become a master like that. Li Qingshan decided to stop thinking about such a distant matter for now. Apart from the tiger bone alcohol, what's in the bamboo basket? That's right. It's ginseng. Huang Binggu opened the bamboo basket. It was actually filled with ginseng. The ginseng that Li Qingshan had spent over 1,000 taels of silver in the past was probably not even a tenth of what was in the bamboo basket. The tiger bone was fine, but the Drawn Rains village was not known for gathering ginseng. He could clearly smell the scent of blood on him. It was extremely faint, but it was very fresh. If it were not for the fact that the scent of blood was so clear, he basically would have doubted his senses. Had his nose become sharper after practicing innate abilities? Huang Binggu said, I've just purged a pest for the Drawn Rains village, so this ginseng is quite an unexpected harvest. After ingesting the spiritual alcohol, not only had his body recovered, but his martial arts had increased once again. Stimulated by Li Qingshan's destruction of the Black Wind stronghold, he immediately launched a surprise attack on the Ginseng King village after returning to the village. The strength of Ginseng King village was inferior to that of Drawn Rains village in the first place. In order to search for the spirit ginseng, Yang Jun had brought a group of experts with him, causing havoc in Ginseng King village. Now it was at its weakest. Huang Binggu succeeded in one battle, destroying Ginseng King village. Li Qingshan fell silent for a moment. Although the Ginseng King village had once held a grudge against him, it was still a village after all, not a den of bandits like the Black Wind stronghold. However, he also understood that if the Ginseng King village had the strength, they would have done the same. Once the enmity of life and death was established, it was almost impossible to resolve. The only way was to defeat the opponent with all your strength. If you wanted to protect your family and friends, you had to kill the family and friends of others. There was only one standpoint, not good or evil. Once one entered the Jianghu, there was no way out. An endless cup of wine to drink, and endless enemies' head to cut. These are exactly what I need. Thank you, Hunting Chief. These ginsengs are worth a lot, and I can't just take them for free. Hunting Chief, please give me a price. Huang Binggu did not beat around the bush. I just knew that your trip to the Blackwind stronghold was not in vain. As for the money, you can give it to me as you see fit. Li Qingshan handed over the 10,000 taels of silver he had obtained from the Black Wind stronghold to Huang Binggu. The value of these ginsengs would definitely be much higher than this amount, but because it was a large transaction, there would definitely be a discount. Li Qingshan's actions did not benefit him, nor did he suffer a loss. Huang Binggu was also delighted. As long as he had this amount of silver, with the help of Li Qingshan's prescription, he would definitely be able to raise the strength of the Drawn Rains village to another level. You have to be careful during this period of time. Be on guard against being ambushed by others. If you need anything, just give me a call. However, I have a feeling that you won't lose. Li Qingshan said, Thank you for your auspicious words, Hunting Chief. After Huang Binggu left, Li Qingshan muttered to himself for a long time. Suddenly, he saw Little and poke his head out from the door and look at him with a burning gaze. He could not help but smile calmly. He wanted to protect this child. This was an unquestionable determination. The sudden change in his living environment and the constant bloody slaughter had caused him to feel bewildered and pained. If it was the him from his previous life, he would definitely be dispirited and depressed, but now, he had to straighten his back and not show a hint of weakness. This was because the child was looking at him. If it could be said that his abilities and strength had given him confidence, then protecting and responsibility had strengthened his heart, turning him into a true man. The medicinal wine and ginseng had arrived at just the right time. There was no need to mention the tiger bone wine. It was extremely helpful to the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. The ginseng was even more indispensable. The spirit ginseng required several days to brew a gourd of spiritual wine, and the taste of the wine was not as rich as it had been at the beginning. Li Qingshan cast aside his thoughts and formally began to practice the tiger demon's fist of bone forging. The tiger demon's fist of bone forging, also had a total of 9 stages. Li Qingshan's current goal was to master the first stage. According to Oxen, as long as he mastered the first stage, he would be able to complement the Tiger Demon's Fist of Great Strength with the Tiger Demon's Fist of Great Strength and explode with the true power of this ability. Li Qingshan first picked up a jar of tiger bone wine and drank a few mouthfuls. He moved about in the courtyard, practicing the fist forms one by one. His footsteps became faster and faster, and soon there was only a blur left in the courtyard, bringing with it gusts of wind. The medicinal wine was quickly digested and absorbed by him. He would stop and drink again, repeating this cycle until noon. He actually felt unbearably hungry again. Moreover, he had a faint feeling that his spirit was being overdrawn and that his vitality was about to be damaged. However, the effects were also extremely obvious. In just one morning, he could clearly feel that his movements had become a little faster. His explosive power was even stronger than before, and the bones in his body had also become sturdier. They could support even more violent movements and movements. He would no longer feel like he was about to break like he did when he climbed Dragon Gate Mountain the night before. Li Qingshan felt very invigorated. He arrived at a nearby restaurant. As soon as the manager saw him walk in, he hurriedly came out to welcome him. "Constable Li, what brings you here? We are honored by your presence. Please, come in." Li Qingshan did not stand on ceremony. He ordered a table full of dishes and ate heartily as if there was no one else around. However, he keenly noticed that there were a few people from the pugilistic world with swords and sabers in the restaurant. Those people were also carefully sizing him up. However, since the other party did not make a move, Li Qingshan could not be bothered to meddle and finished his bill. "Manager, in the future, 4 meals a day, according to this amount. Regardless of the type of dish, send it to my place. I want more meat with bones." Right now, he did not have the energy to go out to hunt. Moreover, he was already tired of eating only roasted and boiled meat. Now that he had money, of course, he wanted to eat good wine and good food. The cooking skills of the restaurant's chef were far better than a half-baked chef like him. The manager was feeling distressed that he had to spend money today. When he heard Li Qingshan's words, he almost fell down. "Constable Li, our restaurant is small and our profits are small." Li Qingshan's was not a big deal. The manager felt that his heart almost stopped. He secretly scolded himself for being blinded by money. Why did he have to provoke this devil just for money? Did he really have a death wish? Chapter 72. Yes, yes, yes. Sheriff Li is a great hero, a great man. He definitely wouldn't take advantage of my humble store. I was the one who looked down on you. The shopkeeper was overjoyed. He immediately accepted the silver and said politely. Li Qingshan turned around and left. The people of the Jianghu discussed quietly. "Is that the descended tiger, Li Qingshan? So he's just a kid." "What kid?" "He personally destroyed the Black Wind stronghold and the Dragon's Gate sect, and I heard he's skilled in the Black Tiger Digs Out the Heart. What's so special about the Black Tiger Digs Out the Heart? I can use it too. Who doesn't know how to use it in the Jianghu?" To the people of the Jianghu, this was basically the most common move. "Shut up. Don't interrupt me." Every single person he killed had their heart dug out. "Can you do that?" Everyone at the table sucked in a breath of cold air. What a cruel method. That's why we have to be careful this time. A few days passed, and more people of the Jianghu appeared in Qingyang City. The attack that Li Qingshan was wary of actually never happened. Everyone observed silently. The vicious reputation of killing people and digging out their hearts really did have an extremely great effect. The more people of the Jianghu there were, the more careful and vigilant they became. They were afraid that they would become the mantis stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. Li Qingshan was happy that no one disturbed him. He could devote himself to cultivation. As long as he had one more day, he could become slightly stronger. However, his figure rapidly shrank, almost returning to his original appearance. However, he was different from his original, frail, thinness. Right now, he was like a piece of steel that was constantly being tempered. He became smaller and smaller, but he became more and more compact and sturdy. He stood there like a javelin, radiating with a frightening sharpness. In the beginning, Li Qingshan had never thought that the tiger demon's fist of bone forging could actually temper the body to such a degree. This tempering was extremely taxing on the body. Now, apart from eating, he also ate ginseng. Yes, he didn't drink the medicinal wine brewed from ginseng. Instead, he ate it directly. Whenever he was exhausted from training, he would eat the decades-old wild ginseng as a snack. The dried ginseng was as hard as wood, but his teeth were sharper than steel knives. After grinding it into powder and swallowing it, he didn't have to worry about having a nosebleed. Before the vitality of the ginseng could circulate in his stomach, it was completely absorbed by his body that was eager for energy. Thanks to the ginseng, he didn't become even thinner. The heavy snowfall came and went, and another half a month passed. Li Qingshan was sitting cross-legged and practicing when suddenly a gust of wind attacked the back of his head. Without turning his head, he bounced up and crashed backwards like a human-shaped spring. The headbutt sent the assailant flying into the stone wall. This was the 11th person who had ambushed him in the past few days. Although most people chose to watch from afar, there were also quite a few who wanted to try their luck. Unfortunately, their luck wasn't very good. Li Qingshan stood up. Feeling the 7 or 8 prying eyes around him, he growled, "All of you scram." His voice, imbued with true energy, caused the tiles to tremble. If the spying eyes were weaker, they immediately felt as if they had been heavily hammered in the head and quickly disappeared. As usual, Li Qingshan killed and took out the heart, then tossed the corpse over the wall. He sensed his own body. At first, his true energy was as thin as a thread, but now it had become extremely powerful. It flowed wantonly in his body like a river. He drank all 8 jars of tiger bone wine, chewed all the ginseng in the 2 baskets, and obtained a few bottles of cultivation pills from the Dragon's Gate sect. He had finally mastered the tiger demon's fist of bone forging, but he was still quite a distance away from the first layer. He didn't know if it was because he hadn't accumulated enough, or if the time wasn't right. He stood up and discovered that his nails had grown longer. As they rubbed against each other, they produced a sound like metal clanging. He lightly scratched the stone table beside him, and 4 deep marks appeared on it like tofu. One could imagine the effects of using a brutal move like the tiger demon digs out the heart with such a hand. He was confident that he could kill all the spying eyes, but he didn't do so. As long as they didn't directly attack him, he wasn't willing to kill them. However, this patience was slowly disappearing. As his cultivation of the tiger demon's fist of bone forging deepened, the vicious nature in his heart became more and more intense. He was like a tiger trapped in a cage, so irritated that he wanted to brandish his claws. He also noticed this change. If I were a martial arts expert, I would have long gone on a killing spree. Am I too easy to bully? This thought constantly lingered in his head, and it grew louder and louder. However, he did his best to suppress it. Little and held Li Qingshan's wrist rather worriedly. Out of the 11 people Li Qingshan had killed over the past few days, every single one of them was a second-rate master apart from the 2 at the beginning. Their vitality was far greater than regular people. Little and strength seemed to grow without any restrictions or bottlenecks. Li Qingshan said, "Let's go. Let's go for a walk." He put on his black wolf uniform and equipped his wind-entwining blade before making his way out of the door. He made his way to the largest restaurant in Qingyang City. Most of the people of the Jianghu would gather there. He wanted to explain this matter clearly today. As soon as he made his way out of the courtyard, the news spread across the entire city. The black tiger has left its lair. Within the Iron Fist, the Iron Lion Lu Hong faced a middle-aged man in his 30s with a thin beard. He said politely, "Halt, Chief Wu, that's how it is." Li Qingshan is no ordinary person, so it's not good for him to take the spiritual ginseng forcefully. Moreover, many masters have gathered in Qingyang City right now. First-rate masters have already appeared. They all want to use the spiritual ginseng to break through to the innate realm. Even if he obtains the spiritual ginseng, it's not good for him to swallow it. Hall Chief Wu lectured Lu Hong, "You've spent far too much time in retirement in Qingyang. You've become more and more timid. Since when have we Iron Fist feared any masters? If Li Qingshan really is talented, getting him to offer up the spiritual ginseng and join the Iron Fist won't be a bad thing for him." Li Long waited on one side. When he heard how he directly referred to his master by his name, which was very disrespectful, he felt extremely displeased inside. "With how you act, you might not be able to defeat Qingshan. Once he digs at your heart, you'll know how powerful he is." How could Lu Hong not understand his disciple? He was afraid that he would say something inappropriate, so he grabbed him by the shoulder and said to Hall Chief Wu, "Hall Chief Wu, my disciple's talent isn't bad. It's quite a pity for him to remain in Qingyang City. Do you think you can take him with you this time so that he can go out and see the world with you?" Hall Chief Wu glanced at Li Long about that. "Leader Lu, you've done a great service by providing us with the information this time, so it's fine if you take 1 or 2 people with you." The main reason why the Iron Fist had set up a branch in such a remote place was to search for talents anyway. He could do this favor at little cost. Lu Hong was overjoyed. "Thank you, Hall Chief Wu." "Xiaolong, what are you staring for? Hurry up and thank Hall Chief Wu." Li Long could not let down his master's painstaking efforts. Although he was reluctant inside, he did not show it on his face. He thanked him obediently. There was a gentle smack. Chapter 73. Currently, the sky was dusky. The person stood in a corner, his black clothes seeming to merge with the darkness. Lu Hong had been paying attention to him very much right from the beginning, as he was unable to sense his existence at all when he was not looking at him. Hall Chief Wu said, "Branch Master Lu, I've come to introduce you to an important figure." He still referred to Lu Hong by his name arrogantly even though he was much older than him. When he mentioned the man in black, his expression immediately became rather flattering and complacent, as if he was overjoyed over being able to establish a connection with such an important figure. "This is Sir Feng of the Hawk Wolf Guard." The Hawk Wolf Guard. Lu Hong's heart skipped a beat, and he gulped. How could he not have heard of these renowned hawks and hounds of the Empire? It was no wonder that Hall Chief Wu acted like this. Even the main leader of the Iron Fist, Tai Bai, had to accompany him carefully. It was no wonder that Hall Chief Wu was so confident. Who would be bold enough to make him spit out something that the Hawk Wolf Guard had taken from him? Sir Feng said indifferently without even looking back, "You're too kind, Hall Chief Wu. Our Hawk Wolf Guard has only agreed to assist you once after drinking with your sect master a few times in Jiaoping City. I still have matters to attend to in Jiaoping City, so I can't take up too much of your time." Jiaoping was a large city 50 kilometers away from Qingyang. Not only did it have a large river flowing through it, making it an extremely important waterway hub, but it also had mines and mines. It was far more prosperous than a small city in the mountains like Qingyang. Hall Chief Wu's Iron Locks Hall was located there. He led 7 branches, including Qingyang. The Hawk Wolf Guard's office was located there. Hall Chief Wu said, "Yes, yes, yes. I definitely won't trouble Sir Feng. Branch Master Lu, why don't you go get that Li Qingshan or whatever he's called?" Lu Hong was not even bold enough to send his disciples. He told Li Long to wait on him properly as he went to find Li Qingshan himself. Li Long had vaguely heard Lu Hong mention the Hawk Wolf Guard in the past, but that was just too distant from his world, so he did not pay too much attention to it. He never thought he would see one in person today, so he could not help but worry for Li Qingshan. Qingshan's probably going to lose his spiritual ginseng this time. If he insists, I'll have to persuade him otherwise. He didn't have much contact with Li Qingshan. It was just a simple feeling of being from the same hometown. Moreover, Li Qingshan's martial arts were much higher than his. If he could join the Iron Fist, he could take care of him. He suddenly remembered what Lu Hong had said in the restaurant that day. He had asked Li Qingshan to take care of him. Perhaps he had anticipated this day, and he was even more grateful for Lu Hong's kindness. In the city, there was no one more well-informed than Lu Hong. He found Li Qingshan very soon and said, "Qingshan, Hall Master Wu of our Iron Locks Hall has come. He wants to see you." There are some matters he wants to discuss with you. However, his mind raced as he tried to think of a way to tell this to Li Qingshan as smoothly as possible. However, he was also afraid of being too obvious, afraid of scaring away Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan said, "There's no need for Sect Master Lu to run the errands personally." Lu Hong was embarrassed. The hierarchy within the gang was clearly defined. Hall Masters were existences a level higher than Branch Masters and Branch Sect Masters. Those who could become Hall Masters were all first-rate masters, so they could obviously order around a Branch Master like him. That damned Hall Master of yours must have come for the spiritual ginseng as well, right? I was just about to explain this to the Qingyang restaurant. You should get the Hall Master to listen as well. Li Qingshan did not stop. He passed through the streets and alleys, advancing towards his destination. Lu Hong followed beside him quickly. You can't do that. Qingshan, I'm doing this for your own good. The two of them passed through a narrow alleyway. Suddenly, a large monk blocked the entrance of the alleyway with a black metal Buddhist staff in his hand. He looked at Li Qingshan and sniggered. His face had always been ferocious, and there was even a vicious scar across his face. His smile became even more vicious. Lu Hong was shocked. The mad monk, Void Slaughterer. Li Qingshan gazed at the glistening staff. It was another spiritual artifact. Sure enough, so-called spiritual artifacts were not particularly rare in this world. Lu Hong did not dare to look at Void Slaughterer. He whispered, "This person once became a monk in the renowned treasure forest temple of the Jianghu. Due to his drunkenness and bloodlust, he broke the temple's rules and was expelled. He went berserk and used the 108 forms of the Mad Demon Staff technique to kill all the monks in the temple. He changed his Dharma name to Void Slaughterer and rampaged through the lands, killing people and robbing them. No matter where he went, he left no one alive. It's said that he's become a first-rate master a long time ago. He's only a step away from the innate master." Quite a few people of the Jianghu paid attention to this in secret. They whispered to each other, "It really is Void Slaughterer. I didn't think he'd actually come. Sigh, looks like we don't have a chance anymore. Stop talking. Let's go. If he discovers us, none of us will survive." He really was infamous. Void Slaughterer said, "Kid, hand over the spiritual ginseng. I'll leave your corpse intact and send you off to the afterlife. I'll even give you offerings every year." He was not being arrogant. As a first-rate master, he could sweep through anyone as long as he did not come across an innate master. "I'll talk about the spiritual ginseng at the restaurant. If you want it, then come and listen." Li Qingshan sniffled. His keen senses picked up the scent of alcohol, oil, and blood on the monk. He continued to walk forward. The monk's staff swung down fiercely. The iron ring let out a rapid ringing sound. Li Qingshan finally stopped. The monk's staff stopped right in front of the tip of his nose. It was only a hair's breadth away from the tip of his nose. "Sect Leader Lu, why don't you go back first?" Li Qingshan's voice sounded calm, but it was like a volcano that was about to erupt. His blood, which had been dormant for a long time, began to boil. Void Slaughterer was completely enraged by Li Qingshan's attitude of ignoring him. He fully unleashed the 108 styles of the Mad Demon Staff technique. The black monk's staff whistled through the air, transforming into layers of staff shadows that surged forward like a tidal wave. The alleyway was narrow. There was absolutely no space to dodge. Li Qingshan clenched his fists. His knuckles cracked. Facing the layers of staff shadows, he did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. Lu Hong did not dare to get caught up in the fight between the two. He turned around and fled out of the alleyway. He heard a rumble behind him. The wind whistled as the two began to fight fiercely. Li Qingshan twisted and turned in the shadows of the staff. This was the first time he had seen the terror of a first-rate master. Not only were their moves powerful, but they were also exquisite and meticulous. There was not a single flaw. They firmly blocked Li Qingshan 3 steps away, not giving him the slightest chance to get close. Clang, 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 clang. In the narrow alleyway, the space for Li Qingshan to dodge was limited. His fist collided with the monk's staff, producing a series of loud metallic clangs. Void Slaughterer was also somewhat shocked. What kind of martial arts did this kid practice? He was actually able to block his mad demon staff with his flesh and blood. This only served to arouse his ferocity. He gathered all the strength in his body and smashed down with the staff. The momentum was extremely frightening. Li Qingshan's eyes lit up. He saw a slight opening. He rushed forward and changed his fist into a claw, aiming straight for Void Slaughterer's head. However, he suddenly saw a strange smile on Void Slaughterer's face that did not match his rough image. A great sense of alarm rose in his heart. Not good. Void Slaughterer suddenly changed his move. The monk's staff changed from a straight strike to a horizontal sweep. Just now, that strike was actually a feint. The narrow alleyway restricted the execution of this move. However, when the monk's staff swung, the high walls and rocks were sent flying. They could not stop the monk's staff at all. Boom. Chapter 74. Void Butcher's expression changed as soon as his plan worked. Li Qingshan was half kneeling in a pile of rubble, his left hand gripping the Buddhist staff tightly. No matter how hard Void Butcher tried, the Buddhist staff would not budge. Li Qingshan appeared to have been sent flying by the Buddhist staff, but in reality, he had reached out to grab the staff at a critical moment and slammed it against the wall. A normal second-rate fighter would have been injured even if they had reacted this way. However, with his bronze skin and iron bones, he was practically unscathed. Even though he lacked combat experience, he was a true combat genius. His reaction and strategy when facing an enemy were top-notch. You're asking for it. Void Butcher snickered, looking extremely ferocious. Li Qingshan felt a strong wave of inner energy travel through the Buddhist staff and surge into his body. A battle of inner energy was the most dangerous battle in Jianghu. Whoever withdrew their inner energy first and could not withstand it would have their opponent's inner energy invade their body, break through their dantian, and tear apart their meridians. It was a fight to the death. Void Butcher was confident that with the inner energy he had cultivated for decades, Li Qingshan would not be able to withstand it. In his eyes, Li Qingshan was an idiot who thought he was smart. He was surprised that Li Qingshan did not vomit blood and die immediately, so he increased the output of his inner energy. In terms of strength alone, Void Butcher's inner energy was indeed stronger than Li Qingshan's. Li Qingshan felt a wave of qi flow into his body. This qi flow was much more turbid than his true qi, so he knew that it was inner energy. However, there was a hint of clarity in this turbidity. Void Butcher was almost at the innate stage and was only one step away from converting his inner energy into true qi. However, the problem was that Li Qingshan's true qi was not stored in his dantian, and he had not even cultivated a single meridian. This inner energy was quickly devoured by the true qi in Li Qingshan's body and converted into his own energy. Not only was it harmless, but it was also beneficial. Li Qingshan did not intend to retaliate immediately, so he allowed Void Butcher to channel his inner energy into him. Cold sweat broke out on Void Butcher's forehead. Why was this kid so strange? Was this the effect of the spiritual ginseng? However, he did not dare to relax his grip. At this moment, a black shadow swooped down from the eaves and went straight for the gourd on Li Qingshan's waist. It turned out that someone had seized the opportunity and wanted to take advantage of the situation. With a flash of green light, the black figure swooped down and landed on the ground in two halves. Little and appeared and casually killed the thief. His sword pierced through the air. Void Butcher's heart skipped a beat when he saw this extremely strange skeleton. The circulation of his inner energy had slowed down by 30%. The sword that was no weaker than an all-out attack from a first-rate master had scared him out of his wits. Sensing that Void Butcher had withdrawn his inner energy and was about to abandon his staff and retreat, Li Qingshan would not let go of such a great opportunity. The true qi in his body turned from a dam to a raging tide and surged into Void Butcher's body. Even though his true qi was not strong, it was extremely sharp. It cut through Void Butcher's inner energy like a knife cutting through tofu and rampaged through his meridians, dantian, and organs. Void Butcher spat out a mouthful of blood and was sent flying backward. He crashed through two walls and was buried in a pile of rubble. Li Qingshan stood up, but his eyes were still fixed on the pile of rubble. He ordered, "Little," and "Silence him." Little and immediately disappeared into the darkness. 3 screams came from 3 different directions. They were separated by less than a breath. Other than the man just now, there were still others who wanted to be the fisherman. They saw Little Anne's appearance. Boom! Rubble flew everywhere. Void Butcher stood up again. His body swayed as he glared at Li Qingshan viciously. He reached into his robes and took out a porcelain bottle. What he feared had come true. Li Qingshan could clearly see the dazzling spiritual light that shone from the bottle after the stopper was opened. If even a second-rate master like Xiong Xiangu could take out a Titan talisman, then these first-rate masters who were more powerful and had more connections might also have a trump card or 2 that did not belong to the realm of martial arts. Void Butcher took out a fiery red pill and tossed it into his mouth. He crushed it with his teeth, and his body immediately swelled up as if he had been filled with air. His arms thickened, his muscles bulged, and his veins popped. Body Eruption Pill. Back then, in order to obtain this bottle of pills, Void Butcher had gone bankrupt. He had robbed 13 wealthy families and killed more than 100 people before he managed to exchange for 3 pills. This bottle of pills could not be used for cultivation or healing. Not only would consuming it be useless, it could even harm the user. However, it could instantly stimulate a person's potential, allowing them to burst forth with demonic powers. Void Butcher let out a wild roar and charged at Li Qingshan like a chariot. Li Qingshan sighed. He did not choose to fight head-on. Instead, he reached for the cursive sword calligraphy on his back. Sword Chi flashed. Li Qingshan walked out of the ruined alleyway and dusted himself off. "Unfortunately, I can't leave your corpse intact, nor can I send you off to the afterlife. I don't have the time to burn joss paper for you." Behind him, the alleyway had already been reduced to ruins. The corpse of the infamous mad monk, Void Butcher, had been split in half. His eyes were wide open, and he had died with a grievance. He had asked Little Anne to kill him not only to hide Little Anne, but also to hide the spiritual artifact in his hand. He had a feeling that if this piece of calligraphy was seen by someone with ulterior motives, it would cause an uproar that would be even greater than the spiritual ginseng. Li Qingshan held the Buddhist staff in one hand. Although, according to Oxen, this kind of spiritual artifact that was purely imbued with spiritual light was an inferior spiritual artifact, it was still a spiritual artifact. He could not bear to throw it away. In his other hand, he held a porcelain bottle with a pill inside. It was the same pill that Void Butcher had taken. So this is all there is to a first-rate master. But I don't think I'm an innate master either. Li Qingshan thought strangely. He was confident that he could defeat Void Butcher with his martial arts without relying on any external objects. If he were to use his trump card would not be any weaker than anyone else's. Li Qingshan carried the Buddhist staff and continued walking towards the restaurant. The people of Jianghu who were watching the battle in the dark were all silent and shocked. The battle between the mad monk and the black tiger. One was a famous first-rate master, while the other was a greenhorn. No one had expected the black tiger to win, and win so easily. Lu Hong hurried back to the Iron Fist and reported to Hall Leader Wu and Master Feng. "Mad monk Void Butcher. He's also here for the spiritual ginseng to break through to the innate realm. That kid is probably dead." Hall Leader Wu frowned. Even if he were to go against the mad monk Void Butcher, it would be difficult for him to win. Of course, he did not care about Li Qingshan's fate. Instead, he cared about the spiritual ginseng. "Master Feng, what do you think?" Master Feng said, "Let's go and have a look. I'll deal with the monk. He made it onto the Hawkwolf Guard's list this morning, but the higher-ups never found the time to deal with him. Since they've run into him today, it's time for him to die." As soon as the 3 of them emerged from the Iron Fist, they received the news that the mad monk Void Butcher was dead. Chapter 75. Hall Chief Wu rejoiced. Fortunately, he did not come alone. He yearned for the spiritual ginseng even more. As long as he ingested it and broke through to the innate realm, the Iron Fist would gain a protector, Protector Wu. If he faced Sir Foam of the Hawkwolf Guard again, there would be no need for him to be so submissive. Sir Foam smiled. He's quite skilled. Is the kid only 15? Yes, it's past the 16th. He must have gone to the Qingyang restaurant now. Lu Hong had looked into this as well. He was afraid of angering Sir Foam, so he did not directly mention that Li Qingshan was unwilling to come. All the masters are there now. Interesting. Li Qingshan had already entered the Qingyang restaurant. There was no longer a single regular customer in the entire restaurant. It was vaguely divided into a few factions, each standing as an equal. Even though everyone in the restaurant had already heard about him killing the Mad Monk Void Butcherer, they were still filled with shock when they saw him carry Void Butcherer's famed weapon, the Mad Demonic Staff. Li Qingshan looked around. There were only 4 people that caught his attention. A one-armed old man with a huge blade on his back, a middle-aged woman with a sunken expression, a smiling rich man, and the pale-faced Wei Dondong with a sword on his back. If it were anyone other than Li Qingshan who had spent a lot of time in the Jianghu, they would pale in fright right now. Was Wan Hao the sect master of the Mad Blade sect, known as the One-Armed Blade King in the Jianghu? He had killed the 18 cavalry of fierce wind with a single arm and a single blade, making his name known throughout Xiaxia City. As for Wei Dondong, he must be the Wei Dondong from the humble Maple Academy, known as the life-stealing scholar in the Jianghu. His 13 swords of life-stealing had reached perfection. Xu Xian and Lu Tingrui were even more impressive. The smiling ghost Xu Xian and the wasp sword Lu Tingrui were all figures that even first-rate masters would struggle to deal with. The 4 of them were all first-rate masters in the world. The weapons in their hands all glowed with light. The weapons they used were extraordinary. Did they possess terrifying trump cards like Void Butcherer? Apart from Wei Dondong, every single one of them was surrounded by followers. They had countless disciples. Apart from them, there were no other people of the Jianghu who could take a seat in the restaurant. Of course, there was one more person now. Li Qingshan walked to the center of the restaurant as if there was no one else around. It was as if he had walked into a herd of beasts. He was thin and did not look powerful, but he had the prestige of a king of beasts. Just like his name, Black Tiger. Li Qingshan sat down steadily and stuck his staff into the ground. Serve the dishes. The waiter came up with a tray with trembling hands, and the wine spilled all over the tray. You spilled your wine. Here's a toast to you. Wei Dondong grabbed the wine cup on the table and tossed it over. The wine cup whistled through the air, but not a single drop of wine spilled out. This was nothing more than a normal test, to test the depth of Li Qingshan's martial art. According to the normal development, Li Qingshan would also display a unique skill to stun the crowd and attract their attention. Li Qingshan waved his hand and the wine glass shattered. Wei Dondong's face turned even paler. The others were also secretly guessing whether Li Qingshan had been injured in the fight with Void Butcher. I have my own wine. Li Qingshan picked up the gourd and opened the stopper. He tilted his head back and gulped down the wine. He paused for a moment. And it's spiritual wine. Everyone's eyes turned red. They were all ready to attack, not only because they cared about the others, but also because they were afraid of the black staff. Li Qingshan felt the true qi in his body replenish. That's right, the spiritual ginseng is with me. Another commotion broke out in the restaurant. Xu Xian said, "What do you want before you're willing to hand it over? How much silver? Name a price and we can negotiate." Li Qingshan lowered his head as if he was thinking. Kid, do you know what this fatty's nickname is in the Jianghu? Lu Tingrui quickly asked when she saw that Li Qingshan was tempted. What is it? Smiling ghost. He looks friendly, but he eats people without spitting out the bones. Even if he promises you 1,000 or 20,000 silver taels, you can't trust him. Xu Xian was still smiling. He took out a stack of silver notes and slapped it on the table. Don't talk nonsense. I've always been honest in business. Is this enough? If it's not, take it as a down payment. It wasn't the spiritual ginseng, it was a chance to become an innate master. As long as he became an innate master, he could earn back whatever he spent. Wei Dondong coughed a few times. I want this spiritual ginseng to save my life. If anyone tries to take it from me, they're trying to take my life. I can only fight with my life. Wanhao said, I don't have long to live either. There's nothing to feel pity about. Li Qingshan played with the wine gourd and smiled. There are 4 people here. Who should I give the spiritual ginseng to? You can decide for yourselves. Since he dared to come, it wasn't because he was brave, but because he foresaw this situation. Moreover, he also thought of a way to end this matter. Chu Exine laughed. Don't fall for his plan to sow discord. Are we going to fight here? That would be a huge loss. Why don't we join hands and get rid of this brat? We'll split the spiritual ginseng into 4 parts. We'll definitely make a profit. What do you guys think? Wei Dongdong said, you, the old ghost, are the most astute in your calculations. If we really fight, 3 of us will definitely die. Who dares to say he will be the last one? As soon as he finished speaking, he coughed several times. Wanhao and Lu Tingrui both looked tempted. Li Qingshan thought, as expected of an experienced person. He won't be led by the nose and his reaction is fast enough. Seeing that he was about to become the target of everyone, he put his hand on the gourd and prepared to carry out his plan. His plan was very simple, and that was to eat the spiritual ginseng in front of everyone. The spiritual ginseng had been soaked in wine for such a long time that its spiritual energy had become very thin. He should be able to withstand it. Of course, this might anger these first-rate experts and cause them to join hands to kill him. However, Li Qingshan believed that it would not be a problem for him to escape. It was more likely that these people would not make a move at all. Without the temptation of the spiritual ginseng, these experienced people would not be willing to risk their lives. If he ran away or secretly ate the spiritual ginseng, then the trouble would never end and it might even increase. Only by spreading the news of the spiritual ginseng being eaten under the gaze of these famous people would he be able to solve this once and for all. This idea was not only based on wisdom, but also on strength. If he was a second-rate expert, then there was no need to say anything. It was precisely because he was a first-rate expert and had the tyrannical strength to kill Mad Monk Void Butcher that he could make people fear him. At this critical moment, another person walked into the restaurant and attracted everyone's attention. The person in the lead was Lord Feng. He was wearing a black wolf robe with a wolf embroidered with dark flowers. Only from a special angle could one see the wolf bearing its fangs. As the robe fluttered, it looked like a living creature. On his waist hung a green sharkskin scabbard. There was even a green cat's eye embedded in the golden handle of the scabbard. His triangular eyes were slightly rolled up, as if he did not care about anyone. Chapter 76. The Hawkwolf Guard. Lu Tingrui cried out. Chu Exine finally could not laugh anymore, while Wei Dongdong's face became sheet-white. Wanhao's straight back seemed to shrink back. Only then did Li Qingshan notice Sir Feng's attire. Sure enough, it was much more impressive than his counterfeit attire. What stood out the most was the iron wolf tablet on his waist. It was the same as the wolf on his body. The wolf tablet was not large, but it shone with light. It was 10 times more resplendent than the staff stabbed into the ground. Lu Hong and Hall Chief Wu followed behind. Looking at the restaurant filled with people, they were both surprised. In just half a month, so many masters had actually been drawn over. Just how long had it been since Qingyang City was so lively? Lu Hong glanced at the staff even more deeply. He confirmed that the news he had received was true once again. He thought, Li Qingshan, oh Li Qingshan, you really are impressive. It's a pity that the Hawkwolf Guard is here today. Even if you're a dragon, you'll have to coil up, and even if you're a tiger, you'll have to crouch. Wanhao said, even the Hawkwolf Guard plans on interfering with a conflict of the Jianghu like this? Chu Exine smiled bitterly. Sir, you're already an innate master, so why must you compete with us? Whatever price this Hall Chief Wu offers, just name it. I definitely won't haggle. Before Lu Tingrui and Wei Dongdong could say anything, Sir Feng spoke. His voice was loud and sharp, but his words were 10 times sharper than his voice. All of you, piss off. Everyone's expressions changed. Because of that, the restaurant became filled with the feeling of an impending storm. Hall Chief Wu added fuel to the fire on one side, using his connections to intimidate others. Sir Feng told you to piss off. Didn't you hear him? Li Qingshan furrowed his brows as well. How arrogant of the Hawk Wolf Guard. Through the spirit he had awakened from the oxen's tear, he could tell that Sir Feng was more powerful than everyone present, but he was not undefeatable. If these first-rate experts worked together, with their trump cards and so many disciples as cannon fodder, they were confident that they could kill him on the spot. As for these first-rate experts, they were all people who could shake a region with a stomp of their feet. They were people who could kill without blinking an eye. Someone had humiliated them in front of so many disciples of their sect. How could they tolerate it? Hua! The 4 first-rate experts stood up at the same time. Then, without saying a word, they leaped out of the window. They had actually rolled out just like that. The vicious words they had uttered earlier were like farts. It was as if they had raised their hands and ruthlessly slapped themselves in the face, loud and clear. However, even if they were in a hurry to use the spiritual ginseng to save their lives, they were afraid of offending the Hawk Wolf Guard. As people of the Jianghu, they did not lack the courage to put their lives on the line. However, Sir Feng did not represent a single person. His disciples followed behind him in a disheveled manner, all of them leaving noisily. The large restaurant emptied out in the blink of an eye, leaving behind only Li Qingshan, stunned on the spot. Lord Feng's name shakes the martial world. Hall Chief Wu hurriedly flattered. Sir Feng's expression eased up slightly, becoming rather complacent. He was very satisfied with the effect he had achieved. He did not even move his feet. He pointed at Li Qingshan and said, "Hand over the spiritual ginseng." He could make 4 first-rate experts piss off with a single sentence, so there was even less of a need for him to hold back against a single Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan should yield to his might and hand over the spiritual ginseng obediently. As for how he would negotiate with the Iron Fist, that was a different matter altogether. Li Qingshan lowered his head. He was actually rather melancholic. Something called the Wuxia dream was shattered with a loud bang. Hall Chief Wu said impatiently, "Hurry up, hurry up." He did not seem like he was asking for something from someone else, but taking back something that belonged to him. Lu Hong said, "Qingshan, hurry up. Hall Chief Wu has agreed to accept you into the Iron Locks Hall. All you need to do is nod, and you'll immediately become an important figure of the Iron Fist. You can go to Jiaping or even great places like Clear River." I'm filled with envy. Li Long also lowered his voice and said, "Qingshan, just agree." Who is it? Who dares to make trouble in my great Qingyang? Yi Dachuan hurried over with a few bailiffs. Hall Chief Wu said in displeasure, "Who are you?" He completely ignored Yu Dachuan's official robes. He could tell with a single glance that he did not possess any inner force or true qi at all. He thought, just anyone is bold enough to approach me now. Yu Dachuan said with his nose in the air, "I'm the district magistrate of Qingyang, the brother-in-law of the prefect." Then he studied Sir Feng and looked at the tablet on his waist. A Black Wolf Guard. You must be the reinforcements sent by the prefect. You've done well. I'll report this to the prefect. When he heard that a group of people of the Jianghu were present, he did not even dare to show his face. However, as soon as he heard that the Hawk Wolf Guard had come, he immediately rushed over with his back straight. As he spoke, he even patted Sir Feng's shoulder. At this moment, Li Qingshan really admired Yi Dachuan's boldness. Sir Feng frowned and moved to the side, making Yi Dachuan miss. He gripped the wind-entwining blade in his right hand, but in the end, he was still fearful of the words prefect, so he did not strike. I have official business to attend to, so please step aside, sir. Yi Dachuan said, What official business? Oh, you mean Qingshan? He's the sheriff of this district. Speaking of which, he's even a level higher than you, ha ha ha. The Hawk Wolf Guard had an eagle commander and a wolf commander. The eagle was the commander, while the wolf was the deputy. They commanded the pack of wolves, while the eagle commander would often hold the position of sheriff. As a result, Li Qingshan's uniform as a sheriff was a simplified black wolf uniform. Jiaping and Qingyang were both districts in name, so Li Qingshan's status as a sheriff was obviously a level higher than a bailiff's. As if Sir Feng had been greatly humiliated, he drew the wind-entwining blade with a swish. It erupted with a streak of light that was 2 feet long, leaving behind a slash on the ground that was 7 feet long. Yi Dachuan retreated in fright. He was knocked over by the door sill, and his round body rolled far away. The guards called out, "Sir!" They wanted to stop him, but they were knocked to the ground instead. Whether it be authority or status, without the support of strength, they would be trampled to the ground very soon. Their authority would be knocked down, and their status would be destroyed. However, in the end, Yi Dachuan had been saved by his position as a government official. If anyone else dared to speak to Sir Feng like that, they would be executed, even if they were first-rate masters. Sir Feng decided not to waste any more time with Yi Dachuan. He directly said to Li Qingshan, "Hand over the spiritual ginseng." "Don't make me say it a third time." The blade in his hand pulsed with light, radiating with killing intent. Li Qingshan could not help but sigh in amazement. So this was an innate master. He thought about it and said, "Shut up." Sir Feng doubted his ears. After being stunned for an entire second, a snicker rang out from somewhere. Sir Feng said furiously, "You're looking to die." The wind-entwining blade swept through the air. He wanted to kill Li Qingshan first before killing the person who secretly mocked him. The blade was only a few feet away from his face, and Li Qingshan felt a chilling sensation approach him, sealing off all possibilities of dodging. He grabbed the staff beside him and swung it at the blade. Chapter 77. All right, all right, all right. Sir Feng said, "I won't kill you today. I'll cut off the tendons in your arms and legs and take you back to the Hawkwolf prison for a proper punishment." The Hawkwolf prison. Even Hall Chief Wu, who had come with Sir Feng, shuddered when he heard those 3 words. The Hawkwolf prison was a prison set up by the Hawkwolf Guard themselves. Captured criminals would be thrown in there, and there would be people specialized in torture to force confessions out of them. It was rumored that there were 108 tortures, and no one could endure more than 10. Even tough men of the Jianghu would be crushed to a pulp, kneeling on the ground and calling for their grandfather, only begging for a quick death. Li Qingshan reached towards the cursive sword calligraphy on his back. He had already made up his mind to flee in this urgent situation. Everything had happened too suddenly. With Sir Feng's arrogance, even if he ate the spiritual ginseng right now, it would be useless. With the enmity of the sword and calligraphy on his back, he might have had a chance to kill this person back then. He had seen a few spiritual artifacts so far, but none of them could match the one in his hand. However, he was not completely confident. First-rate masters all had their trump cards, so what kind of trump cards would an innate master, one that came from a large organization, possess? Legalism of legalism. Blade aura of the great condemnation. Sir Feng's presence changed. He raised his blade above his head, and the light condensed into a blade aura that was 3 feet long. The so-called Great Condemnation was also known as murder, which was the death penalty. Before the blade had even moved, a sense of solemnity and killing intent that surpassed regular martial arts violently assaulted Li Qingshan's mind. He felt like he was a person who had committed a capital crime at the end of his rope. He knelt on the execution platform with his eyes closed and awaited death, waiting for the executioner to swing his blade. He was unable to summon the will to resist at all. If he were a regular first-rate master, even if they did not lose their will, their martial arts would be greatly reduced, and they would be doomed. However, what kind of person was Li Qingshan? His eyes shone with red light, and his demonic nature and murderous nature immediately purged this influence. Tiger Demon's fierce roar. True qi surged through his body, and with a bellow, the jars of alcohol in the restaurant exploded at the same time. Ox Demon butts its horns. The ramrod staff in his hand stabbed towards the blade in a profound arc. If Lord Feng's knife was a butcher's knife to punish him, then he was a madman outside the law. The momentum of the two reached its peak in an instant. Just as the saber and the wand were about to collide and fight to the death, 2 streaks of red light pierced through the air, knocking the crazy devil wand and the wind-entwining saber away at the same time. Lord Feng was shocked and angry. "Who is it?" Li Qingshan didn't say anything. He was equally shocked, and when he looked at the thing that sent their weapons flying, he was even more speechless. It wasn't a divine weapon, but peanut kernels. They looked extremely ordinary, and even after sending the saber and staff flying, they still maintained their shape. Why you're called Fengzhang, right? If you had spent the time you spent bullying children on training, you wouldn't still be in the second layer of the aura refining realm. The voice was erratic and came from all directions. It was impossible to determine the location of the speaker. Li Qingshan suddenly raised his head and looked at the beam of the restaurant. His eyes caught a glimmer of light. Calm down. Fengzhang followed Li Qingshan's gaze, took out a talisman from his sleeve, and shot it at the beam. The talisman shattered in the air and turned into a fireball, which moved even more fiercely. Even though Li Qingshan was standing on the ground, he could still feel the astonishing heat. It was obvious what would happen if he was hit by this fireball. This was the means of a Xiantian expert. They didn't need to bite their tongue like Xiong Xianwu did. They could directly use their true qi to activate the talisman's energy. And looking at Fengzhang's casual appearance, he obviously had more than one talisman. A figure jumped down from the beam, grabbed the fireball, landed on the ground, and casually crushed the fireball. As if he had just done something insignificant, the person looked at Li Qingshan. That's strange. You're a mere first-layer qi practitioner, yet you can see me. However, he could tell with a single glance that what Li Qingshan possessed was not inner force, but true qi. Only then did Li Qingshan see that the person seemed to be around 25 or 26. His eyebrows were like crescent moons, his eyes were like cold stars, and his face was like jade. He was handsome and elegant, and spiritual qi flowed around him like water. He was like a torch in the darkness, which allowed Li Qingshan to discover his location. The scarlet robes he wore resembled the Black Wolf uniform, except it was wider. The dark pattern embroidered on it depicted a scarlet wolf howling at the sky. A similar scarlet bronze waist tablet hung from his waist. Scarlet Wolf Commander. Hall Chief Wu had never seen pork before, but he had seen pigs run before. In the Hawk Wolf Guard, scarlet bronze was of a higher grade than black iron, while wolf commanders commanded a pack of wolves. Their authority in the entire Clear River Prefecture was second only to a few people and above millions. They were a great authority who could decide the fates of people with a single word. Commander Hua, Fengzhang, who had originally been extremely arrogant, was like a mouse that had seen a cat. He was so filled with regret that he was tempted to slap himself. He could not be blamed for his recklessness. He had joined the Hawkwolf Guard at such a young age, so he could be regarded as proud of his youth. Normally, he was used to being arrogant and overbearing. Now that he had come to this tiny city of Qingyang, he did not take anyone seriously. He had forced back 4 first-rate masters with a single sentence, which had pushed his arrogance to the limit. He had been caught off guard by Li Qingshan, so he struck out furiously, but he failed. Right when he was about to use his ultimate move for revenge, he had been interrupted, causing his weapon to fly out of his hand. In his surprise and anger, he obviously could not think too much about it. No matter how arrogant the other party was, could he be more arrogant than the Hawkwolf Guard? However, he never thought he would summon a Scarlet Wolf commander. After all, even regular Scarlet Wolves would never leave the Clear River Prefecture for no good reason. This feeling was like suddenly encountering a large shark in a small pond. It was filled with disbelief and fear. So you still remember me? We've only met once, right? I dare not forget about Commander Hua. I'm surprised that Commander Hua still remembers me. Fengzhang lowered his head and bent his back politely. Every single new member of the Hawkwolf Guard in the Clear River Prefecture had to report to the prefectural city and see the 2 commanders. Fengzhang was no exception. He obviously could not forget his superior, Hua Sengzan Commander Hua. Hua Sengzan said, "Weren't you assigned to Jiaoping City's Zhuojiwa's command? Why are you here?" Fengzhang's brain churned at full speed. He was as nervous and focused as he was when he clashed with Li Qingshan. He tried to think of a way to answer. Hua Sengzan waved his hand. "Forget it. Old Wang is here too. Come and see him." Old Wang. Fengzhang's heart shuddered. Sengzan was obviously not referring to a certain neighbor, Old Wang, but the head sheriff of Clear River, the Scarlet Hawk Commander Wang Pushi. Due to his name, people called him Old Wang, but there were not a lot of people bold enough to call him that. The people of the Jianghu only had a saying, "I'd rather see the king of hell than Old Wang. As soon as I see Old Wang, I'll see the king of hell." Hall Chief Wu, who was as silent as cicadas in winter, felt his head rumble. All he wanted to do was steal a spiritual ginseng from a junior, so how did he end up provoking such important figures? Let alone a mere hall chief like him, even protectors or even sect masters had to be careful and smile when they saw these two figures. Why had they appeared together in the tiny Jiaoping city? Chapter 78. All Li Qingshan could do was follow him. If he refused right now, he would only be asking to be humiliated. Before absolute power, no one could say no. However, he rapidly considered everything he had seen. What was a second-layer Qi practitioner all about? Wasn't it innate? The person he was about to see was also a major figure of the Hawk Wolf Guard. He had no idea why he wanted to see him. Was it also for the spiritual ginseng? His mind was filled with questions that he could not answer. However, the strength of the imperial court completely exceeded his imagination. Instead of saying the imperial court used wealth and glory to recruit these powerful people to serve them, it was more accurate to say that the powerful had established the imperial court and ruled over the world. With great power came great responsibility. That was just a fantasy in American movies. In reality, with great power came great authority. As he thought, the three of them made their way out of the city. Sengzan walked at the front. He basically floated forward, moving faster and faster, leaving no traces on the snow. Fengzhang circulated all of his true qi and did his best to keep up. Although he was nowhere near as graceful as Sengzan, he could still tell that it originated from the same type of footwork. On the other hand, Li Qingshan was not as graceful. With every leap and leap, he would cover several dozen steps with each step. He was like a charging beast, mobilizing every single bone and muscle in his body. He possessed a primitive and crude air of heroism. He actually managed to keep up. Among the three of them, Sengzan and Fengzhang circulated their qi, while Li Qingshan used his strength, which immediately made the difference. Fengzhang thought, if this kid flees as fast as he can, I really might not be able to keep up. He doesn't seem as simple as a regular first-rate master. Once I see Commander Wang, I'll report him and cripple his martial arts. Sengzan was much more discerning. He also secretly assessed Li Qingshan. First-layer Qi practitioner, and his true Qi is still very weak. It should be the effects of the spiritual ginseng. He's practiced some kind of body tempering method too. His vitality is very powerful. Fengzhang plucked up his courage and asked, "Commander Hua, why did you and Commander Wang come here? What's the matter?" He wanted the two commanders to move out. Sengzan glanced at the two of them with a smile and said, "Boss Gu is here." "I don't know why exactly." Li Qingshan saw Fengzhang staring blankly for a long time before he finally reacted. His expression changed drastically, and the jinqi in his body instantly became chaotic. He staggered and nearly slipped. With great difficulty, he managed to regain his balance and catch up with Li Qingshan, his head lowered. Li Qingshan was even more curious about who this Boss Gu was. Sengzan just now said that someone wanted to see him, not Old Wang, wanted to see him. Could it be that he was talking about this Boss Gu? Outside Qingyang City, in a world of silver and white snow, a long mat had been laid out under a pine tree at the foot of the mountain before anyone knew it. There was a small table made of red sandalwood with a few extremely exquisite vessels for alcohol on it. A small cauldron was cooking on a small, red clay stove to the side. The two of them sat before one another, drinking and admiring the snow. They were so elegant and refined that they seemed otherworldly. One of them happened to be Wang Pushi, who wielded great authority in the Clear River Prefecture. He was actually in his 80s, but due to practicing qi, he only seemed to be in his 40s. His face that was renowned for its sternness currently radiated with a smile that felt like the spring breeze in March. The hawk had sent him a message, summoning him from the bustling Clear River city thousands of kilometers away to this remote, tiny city of Qingyang. Not only did he not feel angry, but he felt very honored instead. Old Wang, your cultivation has advanced again. Before long, the Clear River Prefecture won't be able to hold you anymore. Not just anyone could call Wang Puxi by his nickname. Even when Vice Commander Hua Sengzan called him Old Wang, he would glare at him. However, he felt even more honored when the person before him called him that. He leaned forward. I'm willing to serve, sir. I originally wanted Little Hua to take over your position, but Little Hua is far too useless. He's let down sir's expectations. Oh, they're here. Great Boss Gu, I've brought them to you. Hua Sengzan smiled before making his way over and grabbing the lid. Old Wang, is the alcohol still not done? Wang Puxi knocked away Hua Sengzan's hand and shot him a glance. Don't call me that. Sit properly. The alcohol needs to be cooked for 45 minutes. Only then will it be flavorful. Hua Sengzan gasped and sat down to one side with his legs crossed as he clutched his hand. Old Wang, you've been too heavy-handed. He said to Boss Gu, you know how he usually bullies me, right? With his spirit eyes, Li Qingshan could see the two people under the guest pine tree from afar. If Hua Sengzan's spirit chi was like flowing water, then Wang Puxi's spirit chi was like frozen ice. It was so dense that it was almost tangible. Every movement of his would draw upon the spirit chi of heaven and earth. It was filled with indescribable profundities. But when Li Qingshan arrived under the guest pine tree, his attention was completely focused on Boss Gu. No matter how profound Wang Puxi's body was, he was unable to shift his gaze away. A pure white robe, wide and elegant, laid softly on the bamboo mat. It was as if it had blended into one with the vast expanse of whiteness. A face that could topple the world looked at Li Qingshan with a faint smile. It was as beautiful as snow, yet it contained a peerless beauty. Li Qingshan originally did not believe in love at first sight. He believed that he, who had experienced the assault of countless beauties on the internet in his previous life, would no longer have the so-called breathtaking feeling. But at this moment, he was willing to believe in love at first sight. He believed even more that this world had a beauty that his previous life could not compare to. His heartbeat sped up, and he could barely control himself. He had once said arrogantly that he wanted to sleep with the most beautiful woman in the world when he was drunk. To him, this was merely a drunken joke. But now, a strong desire to marry her had sprouted in his heart. Feng Zhang's reaction was the complete opposite of his. He only took a glance before lowering his head, as if the person in front of him was not a peerless beauty, but a ferocious beast. Hua Sengzan glanced at Feng Zhang in disdain, then smiled at Li Qingshan. However, a hint of sorrow flashed through his eyes. Only the most arrogant and egotistical person would dare to look directly into her eyes and then immerse himself in them, unable to extricate himself. Boss Gu coughed softly and sniffled. How many days has it been since you last bathed? Her voice was as pleasant as the flowing of an icy spring, but the words that came out of her mouth caused Li Qingshan to instantly become sluggish. A certain perfect image in his heart crumbled a little, and he really wanted to shout, "You can't say such things." In his heart, even if she could not be like those in fairy tales, where flowers would bloom and honey would flow as soon as she opened her mouth, she should still be more poetic and beautiful. Hua Sengzan could not help but burst into laughter. Li Qingshan did not know how to answer for a moment. Even though he had been training all day, there was no way he would have any smell on his body. But it was also thanks to this that he woke up from his just-now state of intoxication. Li Qingshan just now noticed that there was a small silver eagle hanging from her waist. It was exactly the same as the one on Wang Puxi's waist. Under the illumination of the snow, the white eagle's wings could be vaguely seen. The wings extended all the way to the sleeves, and every feather was extremely fine, just like the legendary feather clothes. Chapter 79. Li Qingshan said, "My name is Li Qingshan. May I know your name, big sister?" He wanted to call her Miss, but although she was noble, She was definitely not the kind of young lady who had been raised in a boudoir. He wanted to call her Miss, but although she was young, she did not deserve this word, or rather, this word did not deserve to be used as a form of address for her. Fairy might be the best choice. Although he had no feelings for this word before, calling her this way felt like lowering his head. In the end, he could only call her Big Sister unabashedly, just like Su Xian, who first met the white snake on the West Lake. Hua Sengzan really admired Li Qingshan. At that time, he could not even speak a complete sentence. This kid from the mountains was really brave. My name is Gu Yenying. Do you know why I called you here, little brother Qingshan? Gu Yenying gently waved the delicate jade folding fan in her hand. There was a hint of ridicule in her smile, but her gaze was very distant. Little brother Qingshan. Li Qingshan would rather be called Tiger Descending the Mountain by the people of Jianghu for the rest of his life, but he thought that he was only 15 or 16 years old. In her eyes, perhaps he really was a little brother. The sorrow in the depths of Hua Sengzan's eyes deepened. Wang Puxi frowned. How could Li Qingshan deserve to be called little brother by her? But he knew that she was carefree and casual, so he could not say anything. On second thought, if she did not have this kind of temperament, he would not be qualified to sit opposite to her. Li Qingshan thought about the only thing on him that people knew about and could take out was the spiritual ginseng. Have you come for the spiritual ginseng as well? If that was the case, he could only hand over the spiritual ginseng. It was not because he was enchanted by her beauty, but because he was not strong enough. Although he was in love with her, he was not a love-struck fool who would casually abandon his principles and dignity. If Gu Yenying was really here for the spiritual ginseng, then her image in his mind would be greatly reduced. Wang Puxi could not help but laugh, while Hua Sengzan was already laughing so hard that he fell over. Gu Yenying was annoyed and amused at the same time. She curled her lips and said, "Who would want something stained with your saliva?" In the eyes of the top experts of Jianghu, the spirit ginseng was as precious as their life, but in her eyes, it was just something stained with saliva. The wine is ready. Li Qingshan calculated the time and placed the cauldron on the table. The moment the lid was opened, Li Qingshan saw thousands of rays of spiritual light shooting out and was reminded of a certain anime from his previous life. A dense wine fragrance spread out, and the surrounding snow quickly melted. The welcoming pine tree beside him clearly stretched out, becoming even more verdant. As Li Qingshan smelled the wine fragrance, he felt as if his muscles and bones had become lighter. The true qi in his body immediately became active. It was easy to imagine what would happen if he drank this wine. Compared to the simple spiritual wine brewed from the spiritual ginseng, this wine was more than 10 times better. Li Qingshan's face flushed red. He felt like an ignorant villager guarding a piece of cured pork and treating it as the world's most delicious delicacy. He was so ashamed that he could not show his face. He wished that she was really here for the spiritual ginseng. Gu Yenying sniffed lightly and smiled. 100-year-old Bodhi wine. Old Wang, you're very considerate. Wang Puxi said, I know that you like to drink, Commander, so I forced some from old brother Tian. Among the 100 clans, the agricultural family is the best at brewing wine. He then personally poured the wine into the pot and glared at Hua Sengzan. Aren't you going to pour the wine? Hua Sengzan stood up and poured 2 cups of wine. Wang Puxi asked, what about yours? Only then did Hua Sengzan giggle and pour a cup for himself. Gu Yenying smiled and said, everyone who sees it has a share. Little brother Qingshan, you should try it too. She ignored Fengjiang, who was at the side. Fengjiang's ears perked up. As he smelled the wine fragrance, he felt as if hundreds of claws were scratching at his heart. If the spiritual ginseng was not that enticing to him, then this legendary Bodhi wine, just 1 cup. 1 cup. He could break through the 2nd layer of the qi refining realm and reach the 3rd layer, but no one mentioned it. He did not dare to blame Gu Yenying and the other 2. He could only grit his teeth in hatred towards Li Qingshan. Li Qingshan lowered his head and said nothing. Hua Sengzan had already forced a cup of wine into his hands. Come. Consider yourself lucky. I usually don't even get to drink something as good as this. Li Qingshan lowered his head and looked at the golden liquid in the cup. He knew that if he refused now, he would seem too petty. Thus, he raised his head and drank the wine in one gulp. Hey! Wasungzan wanted to stop him, but it was already too late. Wang Puxi had not even looked at Li Qingshan from beginning to end. He was only guessing why Gu Yenying had asked him to come over and even let him drink the precious Bodhi wine. Gu Yenying had no intention of stopping him at all. Instead, she smiled and looked like she was watching a good show. Before Li Qingshan could distinguish the taste of the wine, a scorching mass of spiritual energy split open in his stomach and rampaged through his limbs and bones. His own true qi could not stop it in the slightest. Not good. The spiritual energy contained in this wine was even greater than he had imagined. The spiritual light and wine smell it gave off were only the surface layer. Fengzheng was delighted. Country bumpkin. This Bodhi wine had to be drunk slowly. If it was drunk too quickly, the powerful spiritual energy would destroy the dantian and meridians, like a flood destroying a dam. Li Qingshan did not explode and die, because he had never cultivated any meridians or dantian. His entire body glowed brightly as he worked hard to mobilize his true qi to devour and convert the spiritual energy. His body was like a sponge, absorbing the spiritual energy and gradually calming down the chaotic spiritual energy. Gu Yenying stared at Li Qingshan, her eyes as sharp as a hawk's. On the tip of her left hand, an ancient copper coin was jumping rapidly. As she focused her gaze, Li Qingshan felt as if his soul was being seen through. A moment later, Li Qingshan had completely digested the spiritual energy in his body. Gu Yenying's gaze then became slack, and she tilted her head as if she was thinking about something. Wasungzan let out a sigh of relief. It seemed that body refining was not completely useless. Wang Puxi, on the other hand, felt a little strange. The spiritual energy contained in the Bodhi wine was so powerful that it was enough to allow one to directly advance to the third layer of qi refining. However, Li Qingshan did not show any signs of breaking through. He was still in the first layer of qi refining, although his true qi had become much stronger. If he had not drunk a cup, he would have suspected that this Bodhi wine was fake, or that it was not old enough. Li Qingshan let out a sigh of relief and cupped his hands towards Gu Yenying and the others. Thank you. He did not expect that not only would he not lose the spiritual ginseng, but he would also get a cup of wine to drink. However, he still felt a little unhappy. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.